Good morning, maybe good afternoon, maybe good evening. Not sure where you are in the world, but you are right here with us today. And I want to say welcome everybody to our Women in Marketing livecast. I'm very excited to be here. My name is Ryan Culp, and I'm the Senior Director of Content and Community here at Brand Innovators. I'm also kind of the new person on the team, but I am thrilled to be serving as the MC for today's program highlighting women in marketing. I would like to first explain what a Zoom call is. If you've never been on Zoom, you're here for the first time, probably a bad joke, but I do like to just point out a couple quick things. There is a Q&A box down at the bottom of the screen, and we are going to be live for the sessions that we have here today. So I want to encourage everyone to use that tool, ask your questions, and we'll be sure to get to them after each of our sessions happens. I want to thank all of you for being here. We'd like to thank our sponsors and thank our speakers for taking the time to commit here to this really, really amazing event. Now, the marketing industry is like no other, and has one of the greatest joys of being with Brand Innovators is that I get the opportunity to shine a light on some really, really amazing talent, people who are doing really amazing things and inspiring others to do great work and making a difference. And today we're here to focus on the women in marketing who are doing the work that they are doing, because it's absolutely essential, not only for your businesses and for your ability to deliver success for your clients, but also on a social level. And our mission here is to share the work of the executives that we have with us today positively in the way that they are changing the world, changing the way in which brands are going out and basically creating specific experiences. Now, we've got an incredible community of marketing leaders coming here to listen and coming here to speak. And we want to, again, encourage that ability to just learn and connect, ask your questions to not only grow your own career, but also have an impact on others as well. And we will be hearing from some amazing marketers all across of different industries, from Shutterstock to Anheuser-Busch InBev, Procter & Gamble, Archer Roos Wines, SAP, the XX Project, and many more. So please, again, a lot of great speakers here. So use that Q&A box down at the bottom of the screen to ask your questions, to engage with both our speakers and also your fellow audience members. Now, before we kick off with today's live cast, we'd like to share just a short video of some of our highlights from the Media Buying Summit that we had take place recently. So would love to cue that video up for us.
We are thrilled to have you joining us for our latest and greatest marquee event, the Brand Innovators 2021 Media Buying Summit.
Welcome, everyone. Let's get started.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited about this show. All right, so I'm back.
I have two dogs too, so they might want to join the party later.
We have a truly fantastic program planned for you with what I would say is an epic group of speakers, senior media buyers, and marketing leadership from some of the world's biggest brands.
We looked at media more holistically than ever. Consumers don't necessarily know the difference between a paid side of the house versus an influencer, creative versus organic. To them, it all looks like your brand, it's your advertising.
It's another thing when you have a brand that's 50 years old that people think of as a brick and mortar retailer, and you've got to figure out how you're going to tell a story to get them to rethink and create a moment of reconsideration for your brand.
So again, how do we use data? We looked at regionally, where do we have inventory? Because for a while, we stopped making cars and we started making ventilators and masks. First of all, there was a lot of people who really wanted cars because it's your own personal space. Spending really went way back up. And so like at the end of the year, we were back at like our normal budget levels and launching the Escalade.
What we decided that we were going to define content commerce as shortening the distance between inspiration and purchase. It does away with that kind of multi-step, lengthier sequence of product searching, researching. And I think what's really interesting about this space is that these kind of micro moments of discovery are happening more and more in your social feed and through short form video that you're interacting with.
There's just too much now, too much clutter. And we've gone from 30-second ads to now
15-second ads and 6-second ads. So I feel like that is an opportunity for us to reset the balance here. And I feel like that's a huge opportunity and to create, I think, a much better ad experience.
I will always recommend that you want to have the people who work on your business to be as close to dedicated on your business as you possibly can. If you know that they're working for you, then their priorities aren't split.
Being on the streets, connecting with our consumers is critical. So we have a division structure that enables and empowers our local teams to make decisions based on what is right for their market.
Like many other brands, we just had to adapt to make sure that we're meeting customer needs, as well as their changing media consumption habits, right? So fortunately for us, last year, our various creative agencies and media agencies and partners were just very accommodating as we were trying to navigate those challenges.
I think 2021 will be a very interesting year as we all kind of learn and understand the new dynamics at play and how they impact all of our respective businesses.
Awesome. Well, without further ado, what I would love to start our event out with is to bring first and foremost our first set of speakers. And with that, we have Jennifer Braunschweiger, the Senior Director in Content Marketing with Shutterstock. And our moderator for this session is going to be Alyssa Brown, the Director in North America Client Partnerships with Quantcast. How are we doing today?
Great. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So we've got Jennifer here. We've got Alyssa here. I would love to turn it over to the two of you to start your discussion now.
Sure. Awesome. Thanks, Ryan. Hi, everyone. Happy Thursday. Hope everyone had a great 4th. Really honored to be included in such an empowering group of leaders today for this discussion. So thank you to Brand Innovators for having us. We're really excited to kick this off. Before I begin my chat with Jennifer, wanted to briefly explain what Quantcast is. Some of And so essentially we specialize in AI, audience measurement, and programmatic media. So we really work with marketers, agencies, publishers, and apply the amazing insights that we offer to discover new customers, drive incremental growth for our clients, and also just deliver really strong business outcomes programmatically. So if you want more details, have any questions, shoot me a note or on LinkedIn. But today, I really want to get to our featured guest, Jennifer. She is the Senior Director of Content Marketing at Shutterstock. Jennifer, thanks for joining us today.
I'm so glad to be here. It's really fun to talk about all this.
Great. Love the bookcases. I all those books in the background.
Yeah.
Well, before we start, wanted to just let the audience know a little bit about your incredible background that you've had over the years and talk about what content marketing really is, because I feel like there's a lot of confusion about what that actually means. So
yes, absolutely. So I, as was said, am the Senior Director of Content Marketing at Shutterstock. Shutterstock is a creative solutions provider. So, we're here to help people make whatever they need to make. And I run the team that provides the content that shares how we do that and helps people, feel part of what we're doing. I am a reinventor. So I come out of magazine editorial. I came up through magazines with great joy. And then as that industry sadly sort of collapsed under my feet with many other people, moved into marketing and worked at Meredith Digital, which was kind of a creative agency piece of that company, and then worked brand side at a startup DTC fashion company, running brand, and then now super happy to be here at Shutterstock. So content marketing, people often ask what it is. I think it is a broad discipline. And so there's a lot of different ways of interpreting it. So I will share how I think of it, which is, to me, content marketing lives in the intersection of what your brand wants to say, what your customer wants to read, and what is going on in the world right now. So if we're picturing a Venn diagram of what you're trying to say as a brand, what your customer is interested in, and really the context in which that message is landing, that's where you can do any kind of story. So in that overlap for Shutterstock, there's a lot of stuff up and down the marketing funnel. So we might do a piece on, we have a recent piece right now about an African 3D artist. We have another piece about making photo collages in InDesign. So, it really runs the gamut from very thought leadership oriented toward a more proactive, more sort of how-to tutorial. We have a guidepost for the blog at Shutterstock, which is creative guidance in a changing world. So that's the filter through which we run all the stories. There's so many great ideas out there, but how do you know if they belong with your brand or not? It's really important that you understand and the whole team understand what that looks like. And for us, as I said, it's creative guidance in a changing world, and that really orients what we do.
That's awesome. And I have so many questions. So I love that. Thank you for clarifying, because I think, historically in the industry, it could mean a lot of different things. So that was an excellent explanation. So thank you. When we think about brands, and when I talk to clients, or, anyone listening talks to clients, measurement and insights is the $1 million question, right? And so I know that we have brands, publishers, and agencies joining us today. How do you decipher and measure success and understand your audience? Because it's definitely overwhelming, and just love to hear how you do that.
Yes. So, if there are third rails for content marketing, it is measurement, scale, and distribution. So let's go through those one by one. First is measurement. So, that is a question that I am asked all the time. How do we know if it's working? What does success look like? A bunch of things to say here. One, content marketing is difficult to measure. So because of that, you do need a single source of truth. I think that I am often faced with people who come to me with numbers that are coming from different places. So what you're going to measure in Google Analytics is going to look different than what you're measuring in a multi-touch attribution model, is different than the dashboard that your business insights builds for you. They all are different. So I think first you have to just arbitrarily and as a team decide what your single source of truth is, and that is what you are looking at. So within that, because otherwise you get too many conflicts. So within that, what are you measuring? What are you able to measure? There are many different opportunities there. I look at conversion, so revenue. How much revenue are the stories driving? That's a place where our multi-touch attribution models are very useful. I look at traffic, so how many visitors are coming. I look at engagement. How long are they staying? Are they sharing it? That's kind of what we're able to see most clearly. But I also believe that there is a degree of qualitative, anecdotal feedback. So my team runs the blog newsletter, the Shutterstock blog newsletter, as well as the blog itself. My name is on that blog newsletter, and I get messages from people whom I don't know on LinkedIn or elsewhere quite regularly saying how much they enjoy it. So to me, that really matters. That is not as quantitative or measurable as the percentages that appear on my dashboard. But wow, that means so much to me if somebody takes the time to reach out, track me down, and say how much they're enjoying it. Fantastic. And helpful too. So one guy reached out and said that on PC, the special characters weren't formatting properly, which I was so grateful to hear because I'm on a Mac and I didn't know that. So, it's like that kind of feedback and conversation is fantastic. Second is scale. So how are you scaling? This is a question I get asked all the time. Content marketing, even when we're able to look at the revenue that we drive, it can feel like small potatoes or very low stakes in a big global company like Shutterstock. So how do we scale it? So here's how I think about that. performance marketing people think of scaling almost like an ice cream shop, a soft serve ice cream, where you put money in and the person helping you goes over the lever and pulls the lever and the same ice cream comes out, and you give that person more money and you make more ice cream cones. It's the same. It's all the same.
Analogy.
Content marketing is like a buffet. So I have on my plate, I have beans and I have rice and I have salsa and I have carnitas, whatever. I go over to the buffet and I just start dumping beans on my plate. My meal is not going to taste that good.
Right.
So I think this question of scale, when it comes to content marketing in particular, is not a more equals more. So how do you grow in a more holistic way that allows your customer to continue having a meal that makes sense and tastes good, rather than just handing out more soft serve ice creams to more kids? There's 100% a place for that. I respect that and I am grateful to that, but that strategy does not work for us. So that is where scaling overlaps with this third question of distribution, which is content marketing is not baseball. Like if you build it, they will not necessarily come. You have to actually build it and put it someplace where they can find it so they come. So
hold the beans.
Oh, yes. So to that question, where are you putting this content? I personally believe that your pie should be as multicolored as possible. So a lot of content marketing strategies that I have talked to people about are so heavily focused on SEO, for example, that they are missing other pieces of that pie. And then Google goes and changes the algorithm and suddenly your numbers are in the toilet and you don't understand why or what to do. So I'm very focused on making sure that my distribution for this content is much more evenly distributed, and then scale becomes a question there. So what are these different slices doing for you in terms of the KPIs that you're measuring? Which ones are responsive to putting in more money, more people, more stories, different kinds of quality? So then you begin to be able to scale up in a way that makes more sense. But as I said, it's not a single lever that you pull. You have to be focusing on that in all sorts of different ways. So it's complicated. At the end of the day, I think the most important thing with measuring scale and distribution is you have to be making something that people want to read. So, at the end of every day, I ask myself, like, what good stories did my team and I make today? Because if you don't have really great stories, then all the money spent on paid support behind it is going to be meaningless, because you're not putting something out there that people are interested in.
Right. And I think too, as marketers, all of us on this call, we're so immersed in our own brands that we forget to be consumers as well. And so I think it's a great point to step back and be like, would I actually read this if I didn't love the brand that I represent? So I think it's great context for that. I have another question for you. So, you talked about, externally and all the channels that you're pulling the levers for and doing all of that. Because you oversee content marketing and you're working with so many different teams on a global scale internally, how do you prioritize like what works, who you're working with? What's kind of your secret sauce? Because I think a lot of us on the call as marketers work with many different teams internally, and everyone has different goals and objectives. So what is kind of your best practice or tips or tricks that you can share with people on the call just to help ways of working and prioritization internally more effective?
Yeah, that's really tricky. We sit across the whole organization. So, we serve, as I said, Shutterstock is a big, wonderful global company. We serve our enterprise teams, which are the B2B. We serve our e-com teams, which are the B2C. We help editorial, which is sort of our news coverage, and we're global. So we're providing content that supports teams all over the world. And then we have our own goals. So, when I present to senior leadership, they're asking how I've hit content marketing numbers, not just how I have helped other teams hit their numbers. So yes, there are many different stakeholders, and you are prioritizing many different things. And of course, you're doing it with far fewer people and far less money than would be ideal. So, give me a team of 500 and we'll have a different conversation, but that's not the world that any of us live in. So here we are. There's the North Star. So are we providing content that is creative guidance in a changing world? That's the very first thing to check off. And then the second thing is good planning. So, what does your calendar look like? How many times a week are you doing this? It's really about making sure that you have that mix on the plate. And I didn't think I was going to continue with this buffet analogy, but let's continue with the buffet analogy just to say, if you're only helping one piece of your business, then you're not serving up the well-rounded platter. And of course, you have many different kinds of customers. So I really believe people who are coming to Shutterstock are coming because they have something to make. They are making something, and they're sitting in a lot of different chairs when they're doing that, and they're coming at it with lots of different needs, but at their heart, they are creators who are making something. So how am I helping that person? But because that person, my customer, has many different job titles, they're looking for different kinds of content marketing information. So by making sure that I'm serving a mix of my internal stakeholders, I'm also making sure that I'm serving the right mix of our customers. So I'm holding tight on what it is we all have in common, which for Shutterstock is this urge to make something, but then really keeping that mix so that I am saying the right kinds of, not the right, but interesting things to the different people who might be coming to my content.
Right. And I think that brings us to the next question. Shutterstock is very interesting because you have B2B and B2C. And so those are very different conversations that you want to have in this crazy cluttered ecosystem that we have of, no patience and online after COVID, well, coming out of COVID, what kind of has worked for you guys from a B2B perspective and then a B2C to keep those conversations going, to understand the needs of those two different segments, because they are different?
We touched on a lot of pieces to that already in this. So I will say again, first, you need to have something valuable to say. You need to be saying something that people are interested in hearing. I personally am an introvert, so I'm really used to kind of standing on the edge of the room. And I have learned that way that people will come to you and you can have actually very interesting conversations on the edge of the room. So it's not so much that you need to be screaming. You don't need to be the loudest voice, but you may need to be the most interesting voice. So as a brand, what does your brand have authority to talk about? At Shutterstock, it's visual representation. So we talk about visual representation. We have great authority on that. We have great data on that. We have great talent on that. So that is a place where people will come to us to hear what we have to say about that question. So that's really, at the heart of it. To that point of standing out in a cluttered marketplace, it's like you need to understand what you have the authority to talk about, and then you need to talk about it in a way that is interesting and clear and authoritative. And only once you have figured out what that is for your brand, then you start addressing these questions of measurement, scale, distribution, and segmenting from there to, as you said, how you're talking to your B2B customers, how you're talking to your B2C customers. But, it does also go back to that Venn diagram that I outlined at the beginning, which is, what do you as a brand have to say? What does your customer want to read? And what is going on in the world right now? And where those three things overlap, then that's really at the heart. And when you really have a grasp on what that is, then you can start to segment into B2B, B2C, your different internal stakeholders, your different external audiences.
Right. That's great. Thank you. We're going to shift gears a little bit now. Being a leader in marketing, and for those of you that have not Googled Jennifer, I suggest that you do because she is amazing content. what for you, leading a global team and leading and participating in such a great brand, what was one of the biggest takeaways you had from the past year and a half in terms of just like ways of working or networking, because we are very isolated and it's very hard. So again, thank you, Brand Innovators. I've done a lot of different fireside chats just to keep contacts and momentum, which has been great when we're all stuck at home. But, what was one of the biggest kind of learnings that you've had in the past year?
Focus on the people, put the people first. I think we've learned, if we had forgotten, how precious the people are, and that nothing else really comes close. So, I lead with that as a manager. I lead with that as a content marketer. I hope I lead with that as a human. Like one of my employees called me yesterday and was asking for time for a medical issue. And I just felt like, oh my gosh, you don't even need to ask. Like there's literally nothing more important than taking care of your people. And that I hope will stay with us. There has been so much loss and so much trauma globally and isolation. I mean, I started at this job in the pandemic, so I've never met in person many of my colleagues. It's really bizarre to onboard remotely. So really figuring out how to make those connections, even when we're not able to be together, I think is very important. And certainly for those of us who are working at large global companies, we may not even have the opportunity to meet some people. So a lot of our team is dispersed across the world, which is wonderful, but it does change the way that we form those relationships and makes it that much more precious.
Great, thank you. Yes, I'm actually in the office today, the second time, and I'm the only one here right now except one other person. I'm like, hey, is anyone coming in today? So I'm hiding in the conference room. It's fine. So, we're talking about women in marketing. Today there's a lot of amazing women on the panel. As a woman leader, what are some tips or advice that you can give potentially up and comers? Like, you've had such an established career. I think it's important as women that we stick together no matter where we work and how we work. And I think, this is a great platform to create those relationships, but love to just hear from you, any insights or tips that you have to help the next rock stars of the future of marketing.
Thank you for that. I completely agree. So yes, what you said, I was listening to a podcast recently, and there was a woman on it who was quite prominent in business, and she was asked this question, and she said, I'm about being a woman leader. And she said, well, I'm a leader first. And I thought, no, like that's actually not it for me. I happen to disagree with her there. I am a woman leader and own that and celebrate that. And I'm very, very proud of that. I think we're having so many important conversations right now in this country around gender and identity. And I'm very glad we're having those conversations. I think they're really important. And to me, the way to let other people in and to be inclusive and embracing is to celebrate the specificity of who we are also. So I am not interested in papering that over. I'm actually interested in letting in many more people. So I mentor and lead men, women, non-binary people, and do it as a woman. And own that actually quite proudly. So, I understand where she's coming from. I'm not saying this from a position of privilege in the sense that I have been sidelined, I have been marginalized, I have hit glass ceilings, I have felt very much any sort of negative ramifications of being a woman in many ways. So it's not that I say that as someone who has never felt the downside of being a woman in corporate America, but rather to say that I personally don't think that avoiding that is the way to fix it. Clearly, there are other points of view on that, but I own that. And I also, to your point about people coming up in the industry. I once worked for a woman boss, and it was said about her that she had climbed the ladder and then pulled it up after her. And I have really held that as something to very explicitly not do. I don't think that it is a zero-sum game. I think that rather, as I used to say in a previous job, a rising tide lifts all boats. So I do believe that as we help each other and celebrate each other's successes and really enable those, that it is beneficial to all of us. I know that in many businesses, in many companies, it can feel like there's only room for one. So there is one woman on the leadership team, and that's all that's allowed. That means that there is not a second seat for someone else. I know that that is a reality, and I don't want to live like that or act like that. So I behave as though it is, there's room for all of us, and that this rising tide lifts all boats, which may be naive, but that's how I prefer to see the world. So, I own that.
That's great. Yeah. And all of those points I totally agree with. And I also think it's really important that the leadership at any company you work at, male or female, that they're supportive of personal and employee growth. So I think, a big takeaway for me during COVID also was just to check in on my old teams. How are you doing? Let's have a happy hour virtually. Is there anything I can help you with? So I think one of the best things, and my old mentors had done that for me during COVID as well. So it kind of goes up and down. And I think creating those relationships and not being afraid to ask for help or support is really important. And I also think, a lot of us probably on the call are moms. So how do you balance that, being a leader and being a mom? And for those of you, Jennifer and I were talking yesterday, and she has a 12-year-old son. I have an 11-year-old daughter. The puppy was barking in the background, I had to let her in. So there's all of these crazy things happening all around us. How do you kind of manage your day when it comes to leading a global brand, but then also knowing that you have to make mac and cheese in 7 minutes?
So the most helpful thing I have ever read about that is that balance doesn't happen over the course of a day. It might happen over the course of a career. So that gave me a lot of freedom to feel like some days we're just going to be absorbed by work. And in fact, some years have been absorbed by work, and other years have been much more focused on other parts of my life, motherhood being one of those parts, but other pieces of it as well. So I'm not a big believer in guilt. I just don't work that muscle. So some days are, as I said, very work focused, and some days aren't. And I try to not apologize on either side. So, my son is actually 15, turning 16. I had to take 2 days off to take him to camp. So I did. That's great. Other times I have not been able to show up because something has been going on for work, and that's great too.
Awesome. I know we're getting short on time. I wanted to open it up to the group for any Q&A. We do have one, but please type in the chat box if you have any questions for Jennifer. But one of the questions that popped up was, what are some brands that you really love their message, or like how their marketing strategy is going? Like, what are kind of a few brands that you're looking at saying, okay, like they're doing that right, or I really like their brand message?
Sure. I love Patagonia. I mean, I think that they are doing a great job of standing for something. And that's another piece of this conversation that I wanted to get to, which is, I strongly believe right now, particularly with content marketing, that there is no Switzerland, by which I mean you cannot be neutral as a brand. That said, how do you stand for something without feeling or worrying that you're going to turn off a lot of your core audience? And for me, the answer to that is that you take a stand and you take a point of view on things that your brand has authority on. So Shutterstock, we do a content marketing series called How We Show It, which is tackling these issues of visual representation and really inclusive. We're pairing writers with a strong point of view on a topic with a collection of images or a selection of images from our collection that show it really well. So that is one way that we are speaking out and taking a stand. But because it is on a topic that we have real authority and point of view on, it makes sense to our audience. So I think Patagonia does an amazing job of that. They speak out about the environment, and they should, as a brand. People expect them to. They do a really good job of it, and yay.
Love their ski jackets for any of the skiers out there. They're great. Well, we're running short on time. We have about 4 minutes, so I'd love to just kind of give you the floor for some closing remarks. And just love to kind of hear from you for the next kind of 4 minutes.
Oh my gosh, no pressure. I think I have said a lot of what I need to say. I guess the other thing I would say is don't be afraid to be narrow in your content marketing. So I think the more it's just good writing, the more specific you can be, the more narrow you can be. I think you actually do end up bringing in more people that way. So a lot of companies that maybe I would consider not as good at content marketing try to go broad and be all things to all people. And that is not what's interesting. So don't be afraid to be interesting and go narrow and get super nerdy. Like I often encourage my teammates to be as nerdy in their stories as they really want to be, because I think that that's a place where people will relate, and you put out the right honey and you catch the right flies.
Great. Yeah, I totally agree. And, shameless plug for Shutterstock. If you guys have not gone to their site or enjoy their content, please go there. Hopefully, Jen, you'll see a spike in site traffic after this session. Woo! And just wanted to thank Brand Innovators again. Really excited for the rest of the day, for the rest of our panelists. And Jennifer, just wanted to thank you. I think there were so many great takeaways for everyone on the call, and just really admire your accomplishments and what you've done, and look forward to seeing more. So
yay, thank you, Alyssa. This has been great, and thank you, Brand Innovators.
Cool. Thanks, guys. Thank you, Lena.
Awesome. I want to just thank Jennifer and Alyssa for an amazing conversation. We just got off to a phenomenal start. And what do we do with the phenomenal start? Well, we keep the momentum going. We want to keep that energy building up. So I think what the next thing I need to be doing is really get us right into our next discussion. And it's a great one. We've got a handful of employees or marketers with Archer Roos Wines. And I'll start at the top with introducing Sarah Gable, who's the CMO. We have Marion Leitner, who's Marion Leitner Waldman, who's the co-founder and CEO, and also Alicia Towns Franken, the VP wine portfolio. Again, all with Archer Roos Wine. So we're excited for everyone to be here. And we have an awesome moderator, Andrea Nichols, who's the strategic account director with New Star. How is everyone doing? Let's see if we can't bring them into our event. Yes, it's happening. It's always so interesting when you're in this virtual setting. If we were in person, I could see you, I could bring you up on stage, but this way it's just, there's a lot of technical components to everything. But how's everybody doing today?
Wonderful.
Awesome. We're just bringing everyone to the party. And it looks like we have everyone here. So Andrea, I would love to turn the virtual stage over to you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Ryan. It's great to be here. Great to see you ladies again. Marion, it's wonderful to meet you.
So nice to meet you from the shoulders up, at least.
Exactly. The head. So just want to welcome everyone wherever you are. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Andrea Nichols. I'm a strategic account director for the retail and CPG industries at Neustar. Just a little bit about Neustar real fast. We partner with brands to help them better understand their consumers. We help them with their consumers' journeys across all of the channels. And we also help them optimize their marketing investments through our proprietary measurement solutions. Just want to give you a little background on Neustar, but wanted to dive right in because we've got an awesome group of women here to talk to. I'm thrilled to be doing this webinar. I've done a lot of research on your company. I indulged myself in tasting the wines last night and have to say they were fantastic. I had the Sauvignon Blanc from Chile. Is it Chile or is it Chile? I'm just gonna.
It's what you want to make it.
It's what exactly.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And you know what? That's a perfect way to kind of segue into what your brand is about, actually, because it doesn't matter if we say Chile or Chile, because I think I don't want to paraphrase, but the goal behind, one of the goals is to make luxury wine accessible to all in a can.
You nailed it.
I think it's fantastic. So that being said, love to jump in and, allow everyone that's watching this to learn more about the three of you and, your professional journey, what got you here. If you had strong women leadership along the way that kind of paved the road for you, and just really kind of the story behind Archer Roos. I think it's a phenomenal one, and I'm excited for everyone listening to hear. So Marion, I'd love to start with you because you are the founder, chief feather ruffler, as it were, which I'm likening to kind of a disruptive theme.
I think just in general, that's generally my MO. Come in and bring chaos wherever I go. But that's such a great question. The Archer Roos started around my dining room table with my husband and I really wanted to just start a craft wine brand that, as a drinker, I really longed for a brand that shared my values around sustainability, transparency, what we like to call consciously crafted. So I care about what I put in my body, and there are more than 70 additives in the wine industry that you don't have to list on a label. So we're the first canned wine company to actually list all of our ingredients and to share the story of how the journey of how the grape was grown to how it ended up in your can right there, on the back. The story, I guess my personal story of how did I end up here? I have been very blessed in my life to have been given a number of female examples that have really kind of driven me forward. I am one of three girls raised by a very strong father who felt very strongly that we have great role models. And so I went to an all-girls school, and actually the first person that I'd say really influenced me was a renegade nun who taught me history. And she was a phenomenal woman, huge civil rights activist, not who you think of at all when you think of nun. She never rapped me on my knuckles or anything. It was really just a kind, incredibly intelligent woman who really taught me to question and to question everything. And for her, that was actually in conjunction with her relationship with God, was to trust, was to question, and to have this ongoing kind of debate. But that really extended to everything she did. And that was something that I definitely took by osmosis. My second great role model was my godmother, and she is a kick-ass working mom, the breadwinner for her family. And she is so kind too, and really like the matriarch for our extended family. And so I don't know how she does it all, but what she really kind of, the example that she shares with me every day is that work really hard, leave everything on the table, but remember what you're doing it for. And to me, the combination of those characters is definitely what informs the ethos of the company and the type of people that we look to recruit. And because my path into wine was very winding, I fell in love with wine at a young age that I won't disclose on this phone call, on this webinar. But I've always loved the combination of storytelling and wine, but also the way that like there's something primal about huddling around a fire and sharing our stories with one another. And that appealed to me always. And then as I went through my career, I always had this entrepreneurial bent. I founded a nonprofit in high school, then went to college and did a lot of entrepreneurship events, but I also majored in drinking and having a lot of fun. So I always say that if I could go back and do those 4 years again, I actually would really love to. And then I graduated and went into finance. And that's when I realized pretty quickly that I was not cut out for a big company and that I really liked building things. And so I started a literary magazine that ended up being nationally distributed. And I ended up moving down to Washington, D.C. and working in public-private partnerships. So essentially, Melinda Gates would stand out on a stage at Davos and say, if you can get a bottle of Coke anywhere in the world, why can't you get a vaccine? And it was actually my job to help put that partnership together.
Oh my goodness.
And but I always loved wine, and that training in multi-stakeholder engagement turned out to be perfect for managing investors and the complexities of selling alcohol in the United States through a system called the 3-tiered system. And it was literally kind of all just came back to I kind of thought I had my dream job and I wasn't happy. I was working at the World Bank and my mom got sick and my husband and I had this crazy idea. And I thought, you know what? I'm not going to quit my job. I'm not going to do anything so crazy as that. I'm just going to work on this business plan off the side of my desk and see what happens. And just one thing led to another. And finally, it got to a place where it was like, we had distribution, we had our supply chain set up. We were either going to give this a go or we weren't. And I jumped in 2 feet first. So life is kind of funny sometimes.
That's an amazing story. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's awesome. It's very inspiring.
Well, you have to drink a glass of wine in order to sometimes digest everything that's happened in your life and all the crazy decisions that led you to where you were.
It's true. Or a few. Alicia, can we segue over to you? And would you mind sharing your story?
Sure. I mean, my story is not what you would expect. I'm originally from Chicago. I've lived in Boston for 30 years now. And I was raised by the most amazing group of strong, Black, gorgeous women. And to live in a household with 15 people, I'm an only child, and I had a large extended family. And my poor uncle was the only male in the house. He was the best cleaner, though. He was amazing. But being raised by my great-grandmother and my grandmother and my mom, and my grandmother would tell me, because I'm fairly tall and I used to hunch over and she'd say, straighten your back and walk like you have somewhere to go. And I'm like, okay. And off I went. And after college, and I've always worked in restaurants to pay for school, I fell in love with wine, which is no one in my family ever drank wine. So how did I discover this? Just like Marian, I was maybe a little bit older than Marian was when I started drinking wine, but it was, it literally gave me goosebumps the first time I had a red Burgundy, which is a very expensive, unfortunate habit to have. But I migrated from looking to be a neuropsychologist to wanting to know everything there was about wine. And I was fortunate that the restaurant I was working in Boston said, yeah, let's do that. And I built an amazing team. We were all female team. No one had seen that before. You know, my 2 assistant somms, one was from Bordeaux and the other was a descendant of India. And so we were this eclectic female diverse team, which sold $3.5 million worth of wine a year in Boston. Like many people, you make a decision. I got married to this gorgeous guy and I'm having children. And what do I want to do? Do I want to stay in restaurants where you're always working while everyone else is playing? Or did I want to be home for dinner? So I transitioned to being pretty much a full-time mom and also consulting on the side, which allowed me to keep my sanity and also to continue to do the thing that I love, which is drink wine and share wine with as many people as possible. And I now have a son in college and a junior in high school, and this time was just ripe for me to really go full-time in. I'd been on the wine buying side for so long. I wanted to help sort of democratize wine, and I loved Marion's, her mantra, that that's what she wanted to do in so many different ways. Because last year, I sort of came back a little bit more full time in the summer when I helped launch a nonprofit called Wine Unify, which is a education. Sorry, I'm not the best with virtual. I think I'm just.
But I just noticed that my women in brand marketing thing is flip flop, so I apologize for that if anybody could see that.
So Wine Unify was something that we thought was necessary. I had been looking around for so many years for the next generation of people of color in the industry for so many reasons. And one, I was tired of being one of the only ones. And 2, I just thought it was an amazing industry that so many people weren't aware of. So we created something where we were going to welcome, elevate, and amplify the voices of color in the industry. And by doing that, supplying them with everything they needed. And that was not just paying for their WSET, the Wine, Spirit, and Education Trust's credentials, but also giving them the wine that they needed to study with, giving them all the tools. And I lead up mentorship. And I pair people individually with some of the best industry veterans we have. It's unbelievable. The people do come for the education, as we say, but they also stay for the culture and the community. It's amazing what we've created. I'm sorry I'm saying this, but just like I'm proud of my children, I'm so incredibly proud of this. And we founded this on the belief that positive and active energy for change actually mattered. And so that's sort of who I am. And I've been talking to Marion, someone introduced us, and we were just being friends. And and talking about the wine industry in Boston where we both live. And then a few months later, she's like, I'm thinking this. And I thought, I love what you're thinking. And I absolutely want to come and help do whatever I can. I love the people I work with. I love what we stand for. I love the wines that are in the can. And I can't wait to see what we do going forward.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Absolutely.
Sarah, would you like to share your story, please?
Sure. I hadn't intended to go back in time to where I started from, but I'm inspired by Marion and Alicia sort of in their childhood angles. I grew up in a really small town in Pennsylvania, and our matriarch of our family was my grandmother. She was a really strong woman, really taught me work ethic and never idle hands kind of thing. But it was always interesting growing up because she had 2 daughters who had each 2 daughters. So by the time my sister was giving birth to a boy, my lovely nephew Theo, we all kind of looked around the dinner table at Thanksgiving and we're like, what are we going to do with him? We don't know. So it was lovely kind of seeing, each of my 2 cousins have very different careers. My sister is in the legal profession. So I got to see a lot of different types of women kind of form themselves over time. For my personal career, I started in the in-kind unit at the American Red Cross, where I fell in love with product, and then I was encouraged to go get my MBA in brand management focus. But then from there, I spent a lot of time in large CPG companies like Heinz and Mondelez and Colgate, where I learned a ton, and I think really built my fundamentals there. So now what I'm loving about being at Archer Roos is, as Mary mentioned, it's a mission and values-driven organization, so I can kind of appeal to my early career of my a little bit of bleeding heart and the nonprofit passion and apply the skills that I've learned from the larger organizations to try to bring marketing discipline to our daily lives for Archer Roos. And I think, that training ground allowed me to really just learn a lot, because there's so many different marketing structures that you can approach. So I'm grateful for that time to now be able to think, okay, well, what are the best ways to do this for this growing business and building a new high growth brand as we go forward.
Sounds like a perfect fit. So fantastic. Thank you so much. So from here, I would love to segue into kind of like what's happening at Archer Roos today, and what's your vision for the future? What's your day-to-day role, if you will? What are your top priorities for the year and beyond? And then also kind of what keeps you up at night? I know that's a handful of questions, but just if we could go, in round robin and talk about some of those things and really talk about the company and, what the future holds, that would be fantastic. Marion, can we start with you?
Sure. Well, we've had a really exciting couple of months, really exciting year at Archer Roos, where we brought on Elizabeth Banks as an investor and spokesperson for the brand. And the vision behind bringing her on was really, how do we democratize and make wine more accessible? And how do we bring somebody on who's not afraid to make fun of herself, quite frankly, and like take and really kind of make fun of some of the self-seriousness that this industry can bring to the table. And so we've had so much fun onboarding her as a partner. And she's really critical in driving our brand awareness, because our view, or the vision of Archer Roos, is really to make a wine brand that's all about our end consumer, who, where she shops, what she cares about, what she wants to drink, and what she wants to explore drinking, and then make sure that our wine is easily accessible and deliverable to her. And so that's kind of the big vision. And what's kind of powering that, and the pieces that we're currently working on, is we're in the process of launching 2,000 new points of distribution with partnerships with H-E-B, Meijer, Wegmans, and Walmart in Florida. And then we are also launching a partnership with GoPuff, which will allow us to do 30-minute delivery in over 200 metros. So imagine, thinking that you would really like to be sipping on some Archer Roos bubbly and being able to swipe up and just getting it delivered right to your bed. That is a key goal of ours to have in place by the end of Q4. And then finally, it's really about building out this digital community. I think that, wine clubs are a great concept, but historically they've been really transactional. And what we really want to do is create an environment that's highly interactive, that really rewards loyalty to Archer Roos, and ultimately where we can build out SKUs that will allow people to have fun and discover kind of different and cool parts of wine.
I think you can definitely tell that's happening because the blogs on your site are amazing. I mean, you've got recipes, it's great content. So I think the community, you're laying the groundwork for really bringing in the community and make people engage in your site.
Well, Sarah and her team have been working really hard on that, so I won't steal any of her thunder in talking more about that. But in terms of what keeps me up at night, I'm an entrepreneur, Andrea. So if I'm not up at night, slightly paranoid, do I really exist? I mean, that's an existential question for me. I would say though, right now, what is giving me ulcers is just a lot as the world has reawakened from its, COVID slumber. Global supply chain has definitely been absolutely nuts. And so making sure that, luckily the people who love our wine keep drinking our wine, and we just want to make sure that we are producing it and bringing it to them in a timely manner, and that they don't have to wait too long for it. And that is definitely not an easy job right now. So my hat's off to our ops team for really tackling that one.
I can imagine that is definitely a challenge. You hear about that in every industry right now. Seems to be the hiccup for sure.
I mean, when Starbucks tells you can't have your caramel macchiato, it's a really big deal.
No kidding. It's true. or like egg bites or something, because yeah, no, you're right. Absolutely. Alicia, can I pass the baton over to you, please?
Sure. So I had the wine portfolio for Archer Roos, and so my job is multifold. One of the things that I'm doing right now is I'm stabilizing our current portfolio, analyzing to see that everything that should be there is there, and that is what's driving our wholesale channels, like giving people, as I like to say, what they want. But to Marion's point about COVID and the world reopening, I think how we bought wine last year is how we're going to buy wine in many ways going forward. The whole DTC was coming upon us, but I think COVID's fast forwarded it by maybe 20 years. So I'm trying to build a really robust direct to consumer end of Archer Roos, where we're bringing people things that are cool. We're creating the trends. We are really having fun and hopefully creating, as Marion and Sarah like to say, raving fans. I think that some of the things that we're trying to do, no one else has done, and that doesn't matter because we can do it and we will do it. But if you're asking me what's keeping me up at night, everything I just said. The other part of my job is industry awareness, brand awareness, category awareness, industry relationships. And I come from a fine dining wine background, and I love what we're doing. We're putting delicious luxury wines in a can that makes it accessible. My grandmother could not open a bottle of wine to save her soul. She could open a can. So I think that we are also allowing other people to try this fantastic beverage without the snobbery, without the pretension. You know, it's a Tuesday night, or, you know, maybe something more special than that. But I like Tuesday nights and our bubbly and some French fries. So.
Absolutely. Sarah?
My vision for my role within Archer Roos is I'm hoping and wishing to set up a world-class marketing organization. You know, we're building out the team right now, and I'm hoping to fill the roles with impactful team members that will drive the business and be really proud to work for the company. I think that you're hearing from all three of us that there's this high level of passion that is brought to this. So I'm really thinking passion first as we figure out the right fits for laying the groundwork for the future. And then, of course, building the brand for longevity. I'm highly focused on creating and leveraging some of our distinctive assets, like our icon Archer Roos on her moose, so that someday consumers will just go into a store or an e-com environment and just say, I want the one with the moose. And it's just super clear and we can get the job done. So as we look to the top priorities, yeah, it's really about telling those stories throughout the rest of the year and really leveraging our new Chief Creative Officer, Elizabeth Banks, and telling her stories to really help to elevate the brand awareness, as well as really create that world of raving fans, as Alicia mentioned. I think that, you know, what keeps me up at night is that we have so many opportunities and it's so exciting that we're always trying to figure out, okay, how do we tackle this immediacy strategically while also building the right foundation for the growth of the future. So trying to balance those things is definitely something that is always top of mind. How can you build a structure that will unlock just a lot of potential while you're kind of building the plane as it's flying?
Those are exciting challenges to have too.
Very exciting.
Yeah. So, you know, we talked about when we spoke yesterday about queuing up the Elizabeth Banks ad spot so everyone could see. I'd love to share that with the audience and then kind of regroup after it.
Mama wants
here we go.
Can of wine.
One day I come home from work and Elizabeth Banks is here inside my house. I mean, I know her movies, but I don't know her. There she is, just rummaging through my kitchen. She won't leave. Ever.
Morning, sunshine.
Here's the thing. Elizabeth Banks really knows wine.
Nice citrus and peach on the palate. I should be the spokesperson! Marion!
I said no thanks. A celebrity beverage endorser?
Marion!
That's so cliche. But she just told me that she works here now.
Marion, how the hell do you spell sommelier? Is that even how you say it?
Next thing I know, she owns half the company. F me, right? But we're making it work.
Your toilet's clogged. Archer Roos, luxury wine in cans.
That's fantastic. It's really so awesome. It is great. So talk about the response that you've been getting to the ad.
Sure. Yeah. Sentiment on the ads from consumers has been amazing. I pulled a quote from our Instagram feed to kind of help to bring it to life a little bit. And one follower said, "I've done my fair share of advertising and this ad is genius. I mean, absolutely, or I absolutely know I'm being marketed to, but I don't care because it's so damn funny." So I think that the engagement has been very, very positive. It's also been exciting to get some traction around the PR around the announcement. We had over 120 million in visibility and reach just from kind of sharing the good news that Elizabeth was coming on board. And, from the ad itself, we even had pickups from some of the best marketing pubs like Ad Age, Ad Week, and Media Post. So I think that we're really excited about the momentum that this is allowing for us to start to kind of run after. And it's starting to show dividends even in some of our just general KPIs. Our followers are up in the month of June, 152% on Instagram. So we're really excited to kind of be out of the gate with a really, really funny spot. And then we're building the rest of the Elizabeth Banks kind of story arc so that we can keep that content coming in future days and really hopefully continue to be to just build upon that new baseline.
And she'll also contribute to the company as well, right? I mean, she's also part of the organization now. And in what ways will she be contributing?
Yeah, so she's our new Chief Creative Officer. And so in doing so, we have a great agency on board called Colossus that is helping us to kind of think through the overall arc, but really it'll be a partnership in trying to figure out, okay, what stories do we want to tell? How do we want to tell them? Even on this spot, we went back and forth on some specific edits that Elizabeth was really excited to kind of like tweak and make sure that the story felt really strong from her point of view. So it's going to be a wonderful partnership. And she's going to be highly, highly active, which we're really, really excited because then it can be authentic and we're really excited
exactly
to have that come on board.
Right.
And she's made it very clear that she has lots of thoughts on the new wines that are coming out in the portfolio, but she's going to do a lot of tasting in order to get
That's great. So as far as, additional brand stories that you're trying to share with the audience and with the worldly population, let's touch upon that for a minute, because I do know at the core, some of the research I've done, the Archer Roos character is, inherent in the brand, curiosity, world travel. Are those the key types of messages you're trying to get that out? I also feel like there's also, the sustainability aspect of it. So if you could shed light a little bit on some of the brand stories that you're trying to get out into the marketplace, that'd be great.
Sure. Yeah. I think that you hit the one big priority for me right now is telling the stories of Archer Roos. I like to call her the icon because so many of our values are really embodied within her. It's just a lot of rich territory to utilize her as a means to tell everyone about our values, about the products, because the products, we can tell stories about the places that she visited, and these are kind of her postcards home to loved ones, the wines are. And so that's rich with territory, and then we'll be able to tell some stories that help to bring to life in a kind of a fictional, fun point of view. The values of our organization, whether it's the sustainability or like female founder, et cetera. So there's a lot there. We're really kind of approaching it in a bit of a literary way. As you saw, our blog content is something that has helped to really, really build the brand. So we'll be building out more stories to live in that world and to live beyond, so that we can really develop the brand as a whole. And then there will, of course, be continued content development on recipe strategies and some other, because what we really want to do is make sure that we're building strong, engaging content that consumers will want to hear, rather than trying to always just push, our standard brand messaging. So that's really the wish for it in the blog space as well.
Great. And I would imagine there's tremendous collaboration too on the wine portfolio side, Alicia, with keeping the brand in sync and making sure that there's a story to tell with respect to which wine is selected next and is appropriate and what's the story behind it. I think that's
absolutely. And I was just thinking, there's so many stories to tell, and I love talking about wine through stories and meeting the people who create them and seeing the lands where they're made. It's an agricultural product. It's fermented grape juice. So what makes it special other than it's delicious? There are a couple of people we're looking at. Someone in Hungary who returned to his ancestral home from Canada after his family was gone for so many years and switched careers and is now making amazing wines. There's a winemaker in South Africa that I'm talking to whose ancestors were awarded the land after their owner, I guess I will say, passed away. He passed it off to them. And she's farming and making wine in a wonderful winery that they're gifting her a space. And those are great stories. And so when I'm looking at wine, yes, it has to taste good, but it has to have a reason and a passion and behind it as well. I think it definitely connects with what we're trying to do here.
We talk a lot about the new tradition at Archer Roos, and a lot of that comes from this idea that the last 50 years in wine or 100 years in wine have really been dominated by the male white collector, and the whole industry has sort of been oriented that way. And as we think about the daily wine drinker who's not opening up a bottle, who really just wants to have a glass, there's that's a wide tent. And so one of the things that our portfolio is not there today, but that Alicia is doing a great job of helping spearhead, is how do we make sure that the people who make our wine also look like the people we want to drink our wine?
It's funny because I was talking to my mom this morning and sharing with her what I was doing today. And I was explaining, what the brand is about. And she's like, that's the best idea I've ever heard in my life. She's like, she lives alone, she's older, and she's like, I don't want to open up a bottle of wine. I want to have a glass. And she's like, I'm going to find it today. So I went on your site, told her where she could find it in Maryland, and she's off to get it today. So yeah, I mean, the accessibility part is just so key and so spot on for a whole, different group of the population.
Particularly because you deserve your luxury, right? Like, we care about making a really good, high quality, consciously crafted product. But at the end of the day, wine's a treat, right? Because it's an alcoholic beverage. But all of us deserve a little something to get through the week, or a little something to celebrate as a capstone to your day.
Absolutely. So I think we have a few minutes. I know we need to get to some Q&A, but I thought we'd wrap up with a little bit of fun questions. Round robin again. What is your current book or that you'd recommend, or your favorite binge watching program right now?
For me, I'm TV obsessed. I love anything visual. So over the pandemic, I fell hard into the Marvel universe. So anything that they're putting out, I'm totally consuming. So Loki, I mean, you name it. I mean, massive geek over here. So that's what I'm into right now.
That's wild.
Alicia? Yes. So at the height of the pandemic, I was walking 10 miles a day, and I listened to a gazillion books. And I'm reading something right now called The Other Black Girl, which is like Get Out meets really scary things and like at the workplace. But the book that I go back to every now and again is called Nothing to See Here, where children are spontaneously combusting and possibly ruining their father's cabinet appointment in the government. So it makes me laugh out loud, and would highly recommend it.
Oh, that sounds great. I got to check that out.
I know, no kidding. Never heard of it. We got to check it out. Marian, how about you?
So it's summertime. So I read a ton during the pandemic as well. And I but I am hardcore into like, you know, really fun escape novels at the moment. And so I just finished the seven husbands of Evelyn Hugo, which is so good. It's written by the same author as Daisy Jones and the Six. But anyway, the book is about a 1940s, 50s, 60s movie star, kind of like Elizabeth Taylor. And it kind of unveils the secret that's beneath all of these marriages that she's had. And a great kind of look at the arc of Hollywood and women in a very sexist industry and all this stuff. And it's totally engrossing. So that is the book that I would definitely recommend to kick off your summer. And from a binge watch perspective, so I am like an old woman in my soul, and I love Masterpiece Theater. And I'm currently rewatching Grantham, which is like, you know, this vicar who's very good looking solves mysteries in you know, Oxford, England in the 1950s. So if you're feeling a little like a granny, but you want some good eye candy, I definitely suggest it.
I will check that out. So I just wanted to let the audience know, please send questions if you have any. I think we probably have about 10 minutes left or less. So just wanted to put that out there. And one more fun question. Well, not one more. We could have several, but this is a fun one. So tapping into Archer Roos's curiosity, where would you ladies like to travel to next in the world?
I'm dying to go on safari.
Mm.
You know, I have a 15-month-old, almost 16-month-old, and his favorite, like, he loves animals. And like, I actually, to be even more specific, there's this place called Giraffe Manor in Kenya, where like the giraffes just wander around, and then you can go on safari and see all the animals. And like, my dream is to take him there and drink a lot of great South African wine.
I would love to do that too. I've never been on a safari, but I've heard they're just incredible. Sarah?
I like to think of wine as being people's passport, and especially during COVID, when you could go to places, you could travel through wine. And I actually honeymooned in South Africa. And I don't know if Marion has noticed that I'm putting wines in our portfolio to places I want to go back to. So I'm hoping they start making wine in Hawaii at some point. But if I really do want to return to South Africa, and I want to see the other half of Iceland as well. There's so many amazing places to go. So I'm happy that the world is reopening.
It's a good one.
There.
I feel like mine's a little basic compared to those two. I'm dying to go to Paris. I had a big birthday last year, and we had hoped to spend it there. And so I'm really looking forward to getting back to Paris and bringing some friends along with me, and just enjoying all that city has to offer, wine and cheese and all.
Yes.
Sarah,
absolutely.
That's not basic. That's my absolute favorite city. That is not basic.
I think you have to be dead inside to not love Paris. It's one of these places that the best part about it is not to have any plans. Don't make any plans and just see where the
wander.
Yeah.
Yep. Hey Ryan, we're having a good time.
I mean, I wish I had one of these cans of wine with me right now, because video to the conversations. This has been an amazing. I mean, look, it's 12 o'clock where I'm at right now, so I feel like this warrants a nice little drink on after a holiday weekend. This has been amazing. This is really cool.
Well, thank you so much for having us. And I agree. Everything is always better over a can of wine, but it's been really wonderful to get to share some of our story and what we're working on. And I get to show off the work of these amazing ladies who inspire me every day.
Yeah, you three are very, very inspirational, have such an amazing, personal growth. It's been great to moderate this session. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for hosting us and having such a great conversation.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone. Really appreciate everyone's time here today, but we do have to move on to our next session right now. So until the next time, I will definitely be taking a look for your wine on my local shelves this week to see if I can't find it. I'm sure it will definitely be available. Thank you all so much. And thank you, Andrea, for your
Absolutely. Anytime.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Cool. We are moving right along. We have our next session coming up right now. And I'm going to look to my team to go ahead and promote our next two guests to our virtual stage. We have Ioana Tanasa, who's the Senior Marketing Director of Non-Alcoholic Beverages with AB InBev, Anheuser-Busch InBev. And our moderator is Whitney Fishman, the Managing Partner, Innovation and Consumer Technology with Wavemaker. Looks like we just need one more of our guests. Ioana, how are you doing today?
Hey, great. I love the discussion before. I need wine and the Netflix shows and the whole I need a wine as well. Here it's 12:40. So again, as you said, Ryan, maybe it's a bit earlier, but you know, it's still Thursday, which is the new Friday, right? So
I hear you. No, it was a great discussion. And, actually, while we have a second here, maybe we could just find out what you're watching on Netflix right now, or Amazon Prime or Hulu. Oh, no, we got Whitney here.
Here, it took a minute to get the background working.
No problem at all. Maybe that's something we could close out the conversation with. But I know that time is limited, and everyone would love to hear us talk about different Netflix shows and what we're watching and what we're reading. But I know that we're also here to have this great conversation. And Whitney, I know you're going to be kicking it off. So I would love to turn things over to you to steer us through our next conversation.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Really excited, love a good fireside, but one of my favorite things in our industry is getting to talk to amazing people, amazing women, and learning about people's paths to today, right? How do you get to where you are? I think everybody has a different path. I don't think there's such a thing as a traditional career path. Frankly, I can speak from personal experience, and frankly, the most successful, interesting people I know, they don't have a traditional path, right? So everyone has their own path. Yours started in Romania. So I would love to hear if you could sort of hit on the highlights. What was your career path that got you to where you are today?
Great. Sure, I can do that. And thanks for having me. I think it's always a pleasure to talk, especially to talk about my path, but especially in the women in brand marketing and women in business, because I find this such an important topic to really elevate the women we know and to give guidance and advice. And if this discussion is helpful for anyone, that's great. So a couple of highlights from my side. I grew up in Romania, as you mentioned. I finished education in marketing and commerce in Romania. And I finished, I think, 10 years after communism fell. So for us, like those 10 years were like a flood of new products, a flood of new services. We started having McDonald's, KFC. It was just wild. So it was a very rich and exciting time to actually go in marketing. There were a lot of companies opening up. So I ended up having a job in P&G, which was my first very important job where I stayed for 10 years. I did different categories, but then after I think 9 years and a half or something like that, I decided to take on a new challenge, and I moved into a very much faster moving category, which is beer, which may sound a bit, at least at that time, it was maybe a bit weird for a woman to do a category like beer. And I worked in different areas like product development and innovation. And interestingly enough, Romania is a very big market in beer. It's like the 7th market in Europe. So there was a lot of innovation that we could have done. And then another milestone actually that then highlight was that after 2 years, I got the opportunity to go to live in Switzerland and then London in a regional role. So that was a pretty big milestone for me, because changing countries, and I would recommend this to anybody, is, well, it freaked me out at the beginning, but after that, it was such an eye-opening learning experience for me. And then with that, and 2 years later, AB InBev merged with SAB Miller. So I got offered a role in New York, where I'm at now. I'm enjoying the nice weather in New York. I don't know how many people are in New York, but it's like very, very hot. So AC is going on since morning, but it's nice considering all the COVID and lockdowns we had. So we're enjoying that. And only as of last year, I've taken a new challenge to work on non-alcoholic beverages, which is the NABEV business unit, which is the business unit of ABI that's doing non-alcoholic beverages. So this is exciting because it's a new trend. A lot of the non-alcoholic beverages business is really growing. So very exciting. That's about it in a nutshell.
I mean, if we're going to talk about some commonalities and some threads, it sounds like you have a history of leaning into what you know is going to challenge you, whether it's going to an industry that's historically male, raising your hand to change countries, right? Taking on non-alcoholic beverages, which is an interesting market and has so many new dynamics, especially with younger generations. But, you know, for your company, it's historically new and, you know, cutting edge. So it sounds like you've learned a lot and you're leaning into a lot, which I think is great, because I think all too often everybody takes a safe path, right? Which is fine. It's not for everybody, but leaning into discomfort can have a lot of opportunity and excitement and frankly learning. But one thing I know, a lot of people who tune into this, they're looking, where do I start? Right? Or what's the imprint? And the truth is, even if you loved it, hated it, it's in a different industry than you are today, your first career level job, not your first internship, not your first volunteering, your first career focused job really leaves a massive imprint on you, for better or worse. What did you learn at that first job with P&G that's really stuck with you through today?
That's so interesting, and actually so true. I think that the main thing that P&G has, and I guess I was lucky from that perspective, is that P&G is extremely diverse. Even at that time, it was very, very diverse. It had high level of diversity, inclusion, gender, race, sexual orientation, diversity. So it really, really was so good to be in an environment like that, because I learned how important is diversity of thought, even if it's challenging. Like, it's always easy to just hear your own opinion all the time, right? But because it's just comfortable, it's easy. So with this stuff, when you have diversity of thought, but it can build so much more for your personal development, for your professional development. I think so. That's kind of the one thing that I think set me on my trajectory. And from a professional perspective, I think P&G is such a great school of marketing, right? So you learn when you go in there as a junior, you basically do another university and PhD on marketing. So that was definitely awesome. The downside, because you also said that there might be a worse thing, is that it is very comfortable to sit there, and that's why I think I stayed for like 9-10 years. And sometimes that's not good, because you tend to lose confidence of, okay, can I do something else? Being my first job, when I had to make the change, it was very, very scary. So, and I know you said that it looks like I lean into change. I actually think that I was scared all the time when I had to make the change, but there was something exciting in me that was like, okay, this is actually very exciting to do something like beer, but there was half of it was like freaking out. I think when I moved countries, it's fun fact, when I moved countries and I was on my way to the airport to Switzerland, to go to Switzerland, I literally cried the whole time to the airport. I was crying my eyes out, wondering, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? So that's what.
Sounds like you found your answer. Well, I guess that does go to a good point, whether you are someone who leans to change or not. You were there for so long. And I agree with you. It's people often stay at roles, not because they're lazy, not because they fear change, but frankly, they are just happy. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I know a lot of people, we both do, that are legacy at a company, and they're all very inspirational stories, but even if it's a role within the same company, within the same holding company, the same network, what is the advice or insight that you found that sort of gives you that gut of it's time to shake things up, it's time to push myself, I'm getting too comfortable and in not a great way?
So I think that's where I think you've kind of answered the question. You feel like you're not motivated anymore. You feel like you're doing the same thing all over again, even if it's in my case, actually. So that's, and I really appreciate you said that there are a lot of people who have been in companies for a long period of time, but they probably either they changed the role so much or they ended up doing marketing, finance, different things. So you need to have that when you wake up in the morning and you go to work, you need to have that thing at least, I don't know, half of the month, because it can't be, every day of the month to have that, but you need to have that, okay, I'm motivated to do this. This excites me. Even if it's a small admin thing that I have to do, I have to talk to the markets or I have to do a key visual or something, this excites me. If for a longer period of time, you realize that there is nothing there that excites you, and it's actually not that easy to realize there's nothing there that excites you, right? You just at one point you do realize it, but it's not going to kick in the first the first time this thought comes to your mind. So awareness of whether you're motivated and excited about what you do is very important, to keep yourself feeling if you need something else.
So given you were at P&G, given you've worked in different countries, different cultures, different nuances, and now at ABI, what in your past experience has impacted your leadership style today?
So that's a really, really great question. And to be honest, it was finding my leadership style was very, very chaotic for me. And I don't know if this is happening to everybody or maybe other people just know at 20, they know exactly how their leadership style is going to be. In my case, it wasn't. And I think especially because I was a woman, and you tend to get a lot of feedback. I don't know if this has happened to you, but you tend to get a lot of feedback of maybe you should talk more, maybe you should talk less, maybe you should be more active, maybe you should be more directive, maybe you should listen more. And I've noticed that my men colleagues, when I was younger, this feedback wasn't necessarily given. So I was always confused. When you're younger, you're saying, okay, maybe I should talk more. I think one of the fun things that happened to me was one time my manager said, because I'm not actually that talkative and I'm genuinely an introvert, said, you need to ask minimum 5 questions per meeting. We're not getting out of the meeting unless you ask 5 questions. It was like, okay, I'm going to try and ask 5 questions, but it was just so forced, right? So it was harder for me to find my style. And I think, but some of the things that helped me, different managers I didn't have the same type of manager across my career. I had managers who were more direct. I had managers who were more influencing, more collaborative. So seeing other people, how they manage me, how they manage other peers, made me realize, okay, I'm going to try this style, and then it didn't work, or I tried this style and it didn't work. I think another thing in my experience that helped, again, moving to another country, obviously is chaotic and it kind of throws you off. But seeing you're going to see a completely new, different type of managing people that are managing different types of situations in a completely different way. So I think these 2 things, having different managers and different managerial styles and experimenting with different styles, but also being open to a lot of different cultures. It helped me to land where I am, which is definitely not direct and definitely not talkative. So a bit more into the introvert side, but any type of behavior can drive results. So, and type of leadership style.
I find that very relatable. I feel like I'm an introvert extrovert, right? A lot of my role is so client facing and engaging that it ends up just being so exhausting. And
right,
side kicks in after, where most people who work with me would never assume that I'm shy or introverted at all. But it's such a balance, especially when you're trying to lead people, inspire them to be their best selves and come out of their, so to speak, shells and challenge themselves when you're constantly pushing yourself as well.
Yeah, that's very, very interesting. And I actually read a very, very good book. I don't know how many people know about Susan Cain. The book is called Quiet. And it's all about introverts. And that actually opened up my eyes. I was like, oh, there are people who actually draw energy from just sitting back home for at least 15 minutes or in quiet with themselves. But it doesn't mean you cannot portray an extrovert behavior. You learn how to do it because it's needed. It's just you need breaks from time to time to just recharge yourself. So
yeah, and part of that is really just understanding yourself, right? I think sometimes people get so caught up in creating their professional persona and what they think someone in the workplace is, a woman in the workplace is, a future leader in the workplace is. They sort of build this persona, but it's very disconnected from who they are and their core beliefs or their core persona. So it ends up coming across as inauthentic, or it just doesn't work, or it just breaks down. It just doesn't feel right. More so now than ever, especially when home is the office and the office is home, and work-life balance was gone once we got our first Blackberries, really, right? We're kind of surfing through various facets of our life. How do you personally ensure that you are authentic and you're bringing that authenticity to all parts of your professional life, right? So how are you conducting business? How are you managing a team? How are you supporting a team? And how are you bringing yourself authentically so that you can encourage and show them through example that they should be doing the same in the workplace?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think also when you're young, you need to find that authentic self. You said it as well. Like sometimes people think because you've been told or you see how your CEO is behaving and you're trying to mimic that behavior because you think this is how you're going to get there. And it did take me some time to first find myself and what's my authentic self, but second, also having the confidence to share that with everybody. And I think now, definitely I'm in a great space where I can, be confident with who I am. I think one of the key things that we're doing as a team in NABEV is really being very open and transparent with the challenges we have. If we have made mistakes, us ourselves as well, the managers, the senior leadership, everybody just creating this culture of openness and transparency in a very assertive way, obviously not in a disrespectful way. If the results are not good, we're going to talk about them. If the results are great, we're going to celebrate them. So I think that's one thing definitely that I'm doing. Also being honest with yourself. For example, if you're uncomfortable in a situation, if you feel like something is wrong, it goes back to the awareness that I mentioned. Like, if you feel like something is wrong, just think a bit about it. Just be honest with yourself if things are not going in the right way. I think another thing that we do pretty good is sharing our personal struggles. Everybody has and now with COVID and lockdown and everybody's at home, you see kids, dogs, cats. It's actually pretty fun to see very much the personal life of everybody. But even if it were in the office, I think I would be very open to share my personal struggles with my managers, with my peers, with my direct reports, because I think this shows who you are. And it opens up, you're not building a fake persona there. Everybody is a person. So obviously, if you're comfortable with, that's something that has worked for me. And I think the last thing is competition. So I think we're trying, there's a lot of discussion about maybe being very competitive in a team, very competitive, brings more results. Me and my team, and actually my manager as well, Anna, who is the VP, we were just discussing about it. We're not really believers in that. We think that the only one that you want to compete with is probably yourself. Like, do I want to be better? But not to compete with each other, because it just doesn't work to flourish great ideas. So those are kind of the ones.
I agree. The most toxic environments I've been in are when it is encouraged to be competitive and they aren't your colleagues. It's not your team. It's a very me against the rest of you mentality. You don't bring out the best in people long term.
It's a good word, toxic. Like, you should not be in any toxic environment. That's true.
Speaking of toxic, you work right now in historically male-dominated industry, right? How does that reflect how you see yourself as not only a leader, but a female leader? And what kind of onus, or do you feel like it puts any extra pressure on you, or do you feel like you have to approach things a different way, or are you confident that you are just a good leader and don't need to change or make any apologies or move anything about what you're doing?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. I think that the fact that I was actually in P&G for 10 years, so I didn't join a very male-dominated industry immediately after university, actually helped, because I think I might have been completely thrown off of what I'm supposed to be here, who I am, and so on. Although it was a bit of a shock, right, moving from P&G to a beer company. It wasn't necessarily that the marketing department was not diverse, but the industry in itself, the sales, the distributors, the customers, right? You have the bars, restaurants. It's by default a very male-dominated industry. And I may repeat myself, but I think what happened is that I had to find my own way of dealing with the situation that's authentic to me. So sometimes, so whenever I was just trying to listen and see what people have to say, and try to approach the problem in a way that it felt comfortable. It wasn't easy. Sometimes it felt like I was just stalling or not moving at all in terms of driving results, but it does take patience, because you will be in situations that are not easy. And I think a lot of women there probably have been into situations where they felt uncomfortable. They had to deal with microaggressions, gender diversity type of comments, which are, you don't, even if they're small and they feel like they shouldn't, they're not insulting, it just kind of adds up longer term, right? So you have to be aware of these things and make sure that when you feel like something is wrong, either fight back or try to learn from that situation. And I think another thing we have to do, as if we're becoming like senior and as female leaders, we definitely have to start helping the women in the organization and women outside of the organization, and even minority groups within the organization. So that's why we are doing a lot of programs, different programs that will help with confidence for women, with sisterhood. We're trying to understand imposter syndrome, for example, and how that affects your confidence. So we're putting in place this type of program so we can really help the more junior women that have joined this type of industry. So.
And when you say we, is that you driving it? Is the company as a whole driving it?
Yes, 100%. The company as a whole is driving it, but because it's such a global company, what we have to do also within our own business unit to drive this within our own organization. So we have a smaller groups within the organization. We're going to have Women of NABEV. We have other minority groups in the organization, and trying to figure out how we can build programs that will help the groups to advance in their career, to get the visibility that they need, to get the confidence and awareness of how they can thrive.
That's great. So speaking of support, I know everybody always asks, what's the best advice you ever got? What's the best feedback you ever got? How was your life changed by an adage? I'm going to turn this around a little and ask you, what is the worst professional advice you ever got? Because frankly, even from awful advice, you learn something, right? So what was the worst advice you ever got? And what did you actually learn and take away from that?
Yes, it's a tough question. I think there are a couple, I think, actually, that I got. One was, and I actually think I mentioned that, talk more in meetings. You should just talk more in meetings. You sound like you don't have an opinion if you don't talk more in meetings, which made me question myself. So when I realized that, I had to turn that around. I think another one is, and I actually found it very interesting, and it took me a while to figure out, why I don't like it. We had a manager at one point who said, never say sorry. Whatever you've made a mistake, you should not use the word sorry, because this just shows that you're weak, you made a mistake. And I was young at that age, and I was thinking, oh yeah, I mean, that makes some sense. So I kept trying to figure out how I can, position some results that are without actually saying, okay, sorry, this didn't work out. And then I realized it's total, can I say bullshit? I guess.
Go for it.
It's total crap. Like, everybody is making mistakes, literally everybody. Any CEO that you would talk to now, I think half of the time they will talk about the mistakes that they've made and what they've learned from those mistakes. If everybody is perfect, we would not be in the stage we are with technology, with advancements of innovation and so on, because people have learned from their mistakes. So I am actually now using sorry when we have some results and we've not been, doing well, it's what it is. So just accepting the mistakes. And I think the last one that I was thinking of was sometimes you're being told, and that's also specific as a woman, because sometimes you're being told, oh, you may be too dramatic, just brush it off. You're too sometimes they use the word passionate, but they refer to something else. You're too emotional about this. Just, get over it. This get over it, it's if I hear it again, I'm gonna we shouldn't get over it. You need to understand why you're uncomfortable. Why do you need to brush it off? Is it something that indeed something you did, or you want to learn from it, or it's something you have to actually fight back because you're not in the right situation and the other person did something that upset you and this is wrong. So yeah, I think those were the main ones.
Yeah, but listen, you get great advice when you think of something, you realize just how absurd and silly it is.
Yeah. It would be great. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go for it.
Oh, the great thing would be to just figure it out in the moment. And then in the middle of the night, you wake up and you realize, oh, that was actually such bad advice. Why did I even not react in the moment? But
it's usually the people giving advice that you didn't ask for it.
Yes, that is true. There's so many of those.
The real winners. No, I agree with you. I think, I always tell my team, the best thing you can do is make every mistake, just try not to make it twice, right? Because anyone who has a successful campaign, a successful win in work, you know why it worked, right? You know why it was a success. But to your point, when a campaign doesn't go right, or you were so excited for something and it didn't deliver or perform how you expected, that's honestly where the real learnings are. It's hard conversations, it's hard reflection, to your point. And, as Shannon pointed out, sometimes people use the word apologize instead of sorry, but owning a mistake, frankly, it's probably leadership skills that you could possess. But that's where the real learnings are. And the uncomfortable hard work, as you mentioned earlier, the leaning into it, that really is where you start to find the change and start to find the insights that move it forward ultimately longer term.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. And I do think that the word sorry, though, has a different connotation and I know there's been a lot of when I was referring exactly what you were saying about a campaign. So we need to say sorry or owning to a mistake if it is, professionally related and so on. I do think that sometimes we as women, and it's a very stupid example, but if I open the door and then somebody else opens the door, I just either let the other person to go in and say, oh, sorry, which is something we have to completely avoid because we have not done anything wrong. So I think there is the main thing I was referring to is the owning the mistakes and learning from them, not the casual sorry that we say just because we kind of tripped on somebody or,
Sorry for taking up space.
Yes, exactly, for just being here.
So we have 2 minutes left. I guess my question for you is, I think when people talk about starting their careers, you often think about the college grad or someone out of high school who's getting started, or the hustler in their internship. But the reality is, for most people, your career is a first act, a second act, a third act. People are constantly restarting, whether it's at a new company, a new industry, a new career, a new category. What is your advice for someone getting started in their career, right? Whether it's their first act, second act, or third act. What's the piece of advice that no matter where you're at professionally, when you're starting something new and turning the page for that new chapter, that you would share with them?
That's a great question, because I actually don't think it's very different from the first act and the second act and the third act. I think there's let's say there is a recipe probably there's a similar recipe for each of the acts, which, in my case, it was just, if an opportunity comes up, just take it, just be brave, and you don't know where it's going to lead you. But if it sounds exciting, just be open and have a bit of courage to change assignments within the company, maybe to change jobs, to take on new challenges, maybe to change countries as well if this comes up. So just bit of bravery there, because everything is going to be all right. And the other thing is just, and I think you've mentioned this as well, just be patient. The career is not it's unique to anybody, to everybody. So my career is different versus yours and so on. You just have to enjoy the ride and see where it takes you. And make sure you don't surround yourself with people that are toxic or take energy from you. Just people that are, positive, or you can learn from and have a mentor to talk to things, but never toxic people. And I think this was one of the key advice that the ex-CMO of ABI gave to me. And he said the one thing he's not going to do, his time is precious and we have to deliver things. So you don't want somebody who is toxic around you, because it's just going to drag you down and it's not gonna help you in the future.
So professional and personal advice.
Yes, of course, personal. If you want a separate session on personal, we can do a couple of hours, but sure.
Yeah, Brian may cut us off.
Yeah.
But we do have a few minutes for questions. So thank you for your time. And I really want to open it up to see if anyone has any questions regarding this conversation. I don't see any.
Maybe I can ask you, what was the worst advice that you got in your career?
Oh my gosh, so much. How much time do you have? I got the same thing of, don't ask too many questions. You don't sound smart, whereas the only way that you learn, in my opinion, is asking questions, right? I've gotten, stand in the back of the room.
Oh.
Because
wow.
when it's your goal to listen.
Oh.
Okay. What else have I gotten? I've gotten so much unsolicited feedback. It's wild. I know. Ouch is right, Shannon. What else have I gotten? I think the don't ask questions thing was the one that I've heard that really I just challenged. And I was like, how do you expect someone to learn? I've heard the same thing, that you don't say you're sorry. It's the yes and, right? The whole, improv comedy thing of yes and move it forward, and you don't take accountability and you don't own it. So it's rough, right? Oh, we got a question about predictions for 2021, 2022 in terms of the overall media landscape. That's a bit of a pivot.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, that's a very interesting one. I think it's a bit of a pivot. Yeah. I think for 2021, 2022, well, considering COVID, I think digital e-commerce, this has been, booming across all markets. We see gaming. I don't know how many of people listening are gamers here. We see gaming and media within gaming really, really growing, different channels. I think YouTube is going to start some new things as well on the media side. So yeah, anything that's like content, streaming, live, I would say that's where we're heading. That's my view. Whitney, do you have a view?
Gosh, I have so many opinions on this, right? I actually am very excited to see how out of home is redefined, right? If you think about it, the role of a public park, a bike lane, a taxi, type of an Uber, it's been so redefined as we've been redefining what is a safe space, what is your office, what is your school, what is your entertainment, right? If you have younger children, you may not feel comfortable going inside. Outside becomes sort of your lifeline and your park and your picnic place and where you eat, learn, play, all of the things. But in general, I think as we figure out what is our next normal going to be, and it comes fall and people are theoretically going back to their office however they are, and school is starting however it is, I think the role of out of home is not just a marketing opportunity, but an experiential opportunity to deliver utility in fresh ways, whether it's through, AR offerings or traditional just print and smart use of space and experiential opportunities and projections. I just think there's so much opportunity to reinvent how we see out of home and what role it plays in the experiential marketing sphere, but as well as the traditional marketing opportunities. So I'm very excited to see what we do with that space.
That's so true. So true.
Yeah. And the last question, are you getting back to sponsoring live events and spending more dollars on the experimental side?
Well, that's a question whether the live events are actually going to happen or not. So as soon as everything is opening up, sure. I mean, there's Euro final that's happening on Sunday for whoever is European. Italy and England are gonna go at it. Let's see who wins. But I think definitely as soon as things open up, we are.
Yeah, it's such a try. It's so touch and go.
Yeah,
I'm seeing so many things announced, pulled back, online, offline. This is going to be, for better or worse, this is the year of experimenting, right? Especially as we move through this and consumer comfort. And it's almost, I was talking about this yesterday with a client, it's almost a sort of internal negotiation, right? And we've moved much more to, there's it and the ego. We're much more back to the ego, right? Because things like, I want to see a film. It used to be like, obviously we're going to movie theater, but now is it, do I want to see this film? And then what are the 5 different ways I can watch it? Or is it, I want to go to the movie theater. It doesn't matter if it's on the screen, right?
Yeah.
So more the personal experience and demands and desire that really just changes it up.
So true. Let's see how the year ends. Hopefully.
How the year ends, I'll take how the month ends. Yeah, I'm in New York City like you, and it's just everything is just so touch and go, and we will see. It's a lot of opportunity to deliver utility, I think, and I think people get very afraid of taking this positioning or getting involved. But I do love the fact that there's never been a more urgent time to deliver utility to your consumer, and it doesn't have to be these massive, splashy, experiential things. It's those little micro nuances and everyday frictions that you can alleviate. That, just how do they get that drink? How do they, in your case, how are they managing their alcohol consumption or their beverage intake when they're looking to sort of feel like they're drinking something, but they don't want the side effects or the after effects, or it's a health reason or family, whatever the case may be. It's never been more of an exciting time for challenge.
It's a reset.
It's a reset. It's expediting a lot of trends that would have taken 5 years, right? Things like social commerce, but it's exciting. Right? To your point, it's something that's scary and you have to lean into whether you want to or not, because if you're not, your competitors are.
100%. Yeah. So let's all lean in.
Yeah. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Ryan. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for the time.
And we'll schedule time to talk about the personal side. That'll be
Let's do that. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much for that discussion. I actually really loved, the comment about no bad questions. One of my mentors actually told me there's no bad questions, there's only bad answers. And that's something that I've always remembered anytime I ask any particular question. So thank you both for sharing your views and your perspectives. Really, really amazing. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Ryan. Thanks for having us. Bye.
We are, so, all right, cool. Yeah, we are, I don't know, it's just after lunchtime here over in New York City. Again, wherever you are, thank you for hanging out with us. We have 2 more amazing speakers joining us on the stage. We have Kimberly Dobringer. Did I say that correctly? Please let me know. Who's the VP of Future of Advertising, Content and Brand with Procter & Gamble, and Kristen Mason, the SVP of US Sales with Studio 71. So we're going to be having both of our, awesome. I love when everything works.
I love when it restarts right as you're saying my name. It was great.
Well, how are you both doing today?
Great.
Awesome. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. We appreciate you being here. We appreciate you dropping some insight for our listeners. So what I would love to do is turn things over to the 2 of you, and we will see you in just a few moments. So have fun. And again, to the audience, there's that Q&A button down there. There's a chat window. We'd love to hear your thoughts and questions, whether you want to ask them now. Kimberly and Kristen will get to them at the end of the session. But reminder, we are here. We are live. It's 100% real. So please ask those questions. And I'll turn things over to the 2 of you now.
Yes, please. Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for having us. Hope everyone is enjoying this shorter 4th of July week. I know I'm coming off vacation last week, so I'm pretty thankful it's already Thursday. As Ryan just said, we really appreciate you guys joining us for this session of Women in Brand Marketing. For those of you who don't know me, I thought I'd start with a little background on myself and Studio 71. So I'm actually the SVP of US Sales. And today, as he mentioned, I have the pleasure of chatting with Kimberly Dobringer. I did get the pronunciation, I think. Yay, the Group VP, Future of Advertising, Content, and Brand Communications at P&G. She was also recently promoted, which we'll get into, to also lead Head of Content Innovation, which I think everyone can imagine in this day and age is not an easy task with so many platforms and content out there in the ad space. Before we dive into Kimberly and her background, I thought I would kick things off because not everyone is familiar with Studio 71 to give a little glimpse into us as a global media company. We really focus on producing and distributing premium, brand safe content across all video platforms. So we have a content division and they produce thousands of original videos for our owned and operated channels, podcasts, and apps, and also publish about 1,800 partner creator channels globally that generate about 13 billion monthly views across YouTube, connected TVs, and various social media platforms. As a sales team, my team's job is to connect advertisers like P&G with top digital creators for targeted media campaigns, custom branded content, and podcasts. And we're really lucky because we have a really engaged audience, and we're actually the #1 partner for YouTube in terms of minutes viewed. And the content that our talent produces makes up about 10% of online video watched in the US. And I always like to say, while we might not be a household name, our content really is. We're representing some of the biggest digital channels and social stars, from the Soul Publishing, 5 Minute Crafts, and 1, 2, 3, Go, to Tyler Oakley, Naomi Campbell, VAT19, Body 2, Fish Fam, et cetera, whether they're posting across YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Snap, scaling on OTT, or producing great podcasts, we're the engine behind that content and those talent partnerships. So we are lucky enough to actually partner with P&G in both the US and Canada from a media perspective. And I thought I'd kick it over to Kimberly, my fellow Ohioan, as we discovered. And we'd love to get a little background on you and your career to start things off.
Thank you, Kristen. So it is so lovely to be here with all of you. I was listening to the woman before who was a ex-P&G'er as well. And it was fun to hear about how long you stay with the company. So I am one of those that have been with P&G for 31 years. So I am one of those lifers at P&G at this point. I started in brand management. I was there for 8 years before I moved into an expert role focused on brand strategy and communication. And I've spent the next 23 years working across P&G and almost every one of our brands, working with their agencies to make the best possible communication, whether it was Global Gillette, Global Pantene, or currently Tide, Bounty, and Charmin. I have a ton of fun working with these brands and helping these brands to grow. And then more recently, in the last 3 or 4 years, heading up the future of advertising for P&G and what that looks like and how we actually delight consumers more as opposed to annoy consumers with advertising. So that's been my focus, which has led into the world of new ways of thinking about content and storytelling.
Yeah, easy task you got going there. I thought it might be interesting to talk a little bit about that, your particular role at P&G, and also like as a woman in brand marketing, from a progression standpoint. Obviously you've been there a long time, but like, how did you actually choose marketing as your field? And then also, I mean, I know it's a huge one, but what drew you to P&G?
Yeah, I actually was a marketing major at Miami University of Ohio. I always wanted to be in marketing. I was one of those weird people that I kind of knew what I wanted to do. And I loved it. I loved the experience I had there at Miami, and I worked with P&G directly. They were one of the clients in one of our class projects. And I got to know a gentleman named Richardson McKinney, who ended up becoming a mentor of mine and pulled me into P&G and ended up interviewing there. So it really was from my experience at Miami. And I love building brands and how they speak and how they talk and connecting with them with consumers. I've always loved it. So it started way back then. And then when I joined P&G, I came into healthcare. And that's where I started my first 8 years, was working across the brands in healthcare, like Crest and Metamucil and Vicks 44.
I love Vicks. And you're also completely opposite of me. I was a finance major, had no idea I would go into advertising. I love math, and now I use it in Excel, but that's about it.
You know what's fun? I'm a math minor because I love problem solving.
Oh,
and
me
there's a
too.
mentality of problem solving that comes with math that I really appreciate.
Funny. I feel like I'm just starting to get into like math with my 6-year-old son, and I'm like, this is it. It's like I can't wait for word problems again. That's so funny.
But I'll say, you asked me and I didn't answer the second part of your question. I just realized is what drew me to P&G. And, I'm an Ohio, born and raised person. And lived very rurally. So Cincinnati was the big city and P&G was the epitome of the best marketing company. And so that was what drew me, the reputation and what P&G was doing. So that was how I got to P&G. And obviously I've then stayed.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I as I said, a fellow Ohioan, I totally hear you, but it obviously speaks volumes to me, right? Like in this day and age, I feel like people are not so much loyalists to companies, and it's pretty incredible, right? Like that speaks volumes about the culture of the company, and then obviously your passion for the brands. But I think it's really interesting that and amazing that you've been there for.
I will speak to that on why have I been here this long? It was like, is it? And I will tell you, it's because I am challenged still today. Like I'm learning today, I'm challenged today. I'm able to lean in on projects and things that I'm passionate about that I believe can help the company. And being able to have that opportunity and give that chance within a company like P&G with brands that P&G has, honestly, I see it as a gift. So I've never felt like I have stopped, that I have not been challenged or, able to say, what's next? What do I do next? So yeah. I feel very blessed from that standpoint.
Honestly, you should be too, because I feel like not a lot of companies give you that growth. Even the women who were speaking in the last panel, I think they were ending on just about the fact that you want to be able to grow within a company and jump around to different, areas of the world, if that opens up for you, or also just different types of, fields within a given company. And the fact that they offer that's pretty awesome. Right. I thought, since I just mentioned my 6-year-old, I know we were talking a little bit just about being a mom and as a woman, obviously, this being women in brand marketing, how has being a mom or a woman really influenced how, you do your job on a day-to-day?
Yeah, the first thing that I think everyone goes through, especially when they become a mom, is it prioritizes your life really quick. Mm-hmm. Like your ability to focus and get done what you need to get done so that you can get home, it just rearranges your priorities in a way that becomes much sharper. It doesn't mean it's easy, and it doesn't mean it's easy to stick to, because it's a constant battle, but it really does align your priorities. And again, I have an amazing, talented husband who chose to stay at home with our kids, which has been, again, a blessing for our family. But it also meant, at least in my household, is there are no gender roles. Like I am the primary wage earner. He was, the PTO president. Awesome. I actually am the one that coached basketball for my daughter and baseball for my son. And he's actually a very talented singer and theater director on the arts side. So that the way that I see coming to a mom at work does have to do with what's the support system you have around you. Yeah. Whether it's your husband or whether that's the people you need to bring in to help you. Like, I do think we need help. Like being a full-time working mom, you need help coming from somewhere. And I think recognizing and being okay to accept and get help is actually incredibly important.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's so necessary, and there's a million things going on in our head at any one given moment, right? So whether it's work related, I feel like I barely sleep. I think I use some of those sequels, but it's funny, right? Because you need that to quiet all the things that are going on, but you definitely need that support, and it is so different in terms of the balance in a household, I think now as it was 50 years ago. So it's pretty awesome.
That's such a great point. We just had some of our home care brands just came out with, how to change the chore gap. Right. And I think, I know I'm off on a tangent, but that chore gap and changing that chore gap is like critical. Like anybody can help. I remember one of the first jobs I gave my son was to refill the toilet paper.
Oh,
no one likes refilling the toilet paper roll, right? It's always out. One of the first things that my little 2-year-old could do was refill the toilet paper. And it became, so anyway, but the chore gap is really important. And I think for women that are working, finding that balance, that support, those systems, in again, whatever way it looks like for you, I just couldn't say enough about that.
I'm taking that as my biggest takeaway. I'm going to start making my son change the the paper. And it's so true, because this is actually embarrassing to say this out loud, but it was just my 12th wedding anniversary, and I bought my husband, who I call like the ironing king, a steamer. That was my very romantic 12-year anniversary gift for him. So it's all about like, what can they do to help, and how can you balance that. But I was going to actually ask, have you ever felt or like you struggled or felt conflicted about that balance between your career and personal life, or with your husband being so supportive and able to help it with home? Is it not?
Yes. No, yes, like it, because I'm still mom, right? We're never not mom, no matter how much support we have. And, I took a early survey in my P&G days, and what came back on what drove me has stuck with me. And it was two things. It was balance and challenge. And that kind of defines me as a person. I love my work. I love my job. I love what I do at work, and I love my family, and I love being at home, and finding the balance between those is a constant struggle. And honestly, as my children have gotten older, it changes how that balance is found and what that balance looks like. And then challenge, like the fact that at work I can be challenged every single day on what's coming next and not ever feel stagnant is like such an amazing opportunity. But I will say, one of my cheats is I look for twofers, like two things that you get out of. Mm-hmm. So for my children, like they were in sports or in theater. So one of the reasons I was a coach was because it then gave me an opportunity to be with my kids, have something fun, support my community in a way of volunteering. So it was just this added benefit of getting more than one thing. So instead of just sitting back and watching, I could actually be a part of the whole process and enjoy that. So I look for twofers all the time. Like, how do I combine things that I really want to do into something that becomes better?
I love that. I love that. My son's just getting into it, so maybe I'll take your advice. Although I think I might have to compete with my husband about who gets to be the coach. And I'm definitely not the hockey coach, because I cannot skate for the life of me.
Well, what's interesting about that too is when you're the coach, you have to be there, right? So back to that priority thing. Yeah. It's things that create the fact that you have to go. It's not optional. It's not, oh, maybe I don't see this game. It's like you have to go. Yeah. And I do think that women actually who don't have kids, like I think sometimes they feel like, wait, I don't get the excuse. And that's not right either, right? They should have every opportunity to do what they need to do and what's part of their life and what fulfills them, without necessarily having kids, the reason they've got to go do it. So that's one of the things I actually, when I'm talking to some of the women in the workforce that don't have children, that not having that, no, I got to go do it because of my kids. Like, it can't be the only reason why women can have a balanced life.
I agree. And I think it really, it's actually interesting, because I think it has to come from the top down, right? Because to me, it was at my husband's company, but the best piece of advice I ever got was with open calendars. And now even more so, because, everybody's remote or semi-remote. But what I think is so interesting is like putting in things, whether it's like, I need to leave early, or I'm leaving at 3 p.m. today to make my daughter's travel soccer game in, XYZ, so that it gives you that balance, because you need it, right? Otherwise you're missing out on big, important things in their life or your own life too. So, right. There's always time. And I think also with the culture of phones and communication, we're able to have that constant balance if we need it.
Yeah. I was just listening to a podcast, and, one of the things it talked about was money is not your greatest resource, time is, right? How you choose to spend your time, where you choose to put your time, and making the conscious effort of how you spend your time, I think can be incredibly freeing and healthy.
I love that. That's a great piece of advice. I did want to ask too, just like in terms of bigger challenges in your role and your career, since it is such a robust title, which means you're probably running and managing a lot of teams and people. Do you have any like bigger challenges or things that you wanted to talk about in your career?
Yeah, I think the first challenge was when I actually stepped out of line management. At P&G, being on the marketing brand side of things, I'm under Mark Pritchard. I report to Mark Pritchard and his organization. So being outside of now the traditional brand marketing line was a big deal. It was a big step, and making that choice was actually one of those important life decisions, because this job, I love this job. It's what I'm good at, and it's focused on advertising and communication and working with our agencies and you know, like on the future of advertising. You know, when Mark called and said, "Hey, I'd like you to lead this," like, talk about a challenge. Like, it was uncharted. We weren't sure what we were going to do, wasn't sure on the path, you know, but he was great, because Mark's point was, in that case, he's like, focus on the consumer problem we're solving, and then tell me what you need to do to solve it. It wasn't like, by this date, by this time. It was, you know, help figure this out. And so that was probably the biggest challenge I ever had in my career, was saying yes to Mark on leading future of advertising. And for the last 4 years, I've put together a really passionate team of people who also want to help figure out what we need to be doing as a company and how we can better serve consumers, so that the experience is something they want to watch. That's, you know, information, communication, stories they want to watch and lean into, and improving that advertising experience. So that was probably the single biggest thing, because it was, you know, uncharted, not clear, and kind of like, how do you do it? And the best way to do that is start to pull people in that you believe in and trust in, that don't think like you. Yeah. And start creating what could that look like, and what might that look like. And then the same thing has now happened with innovating on content and how we tell stories. It was like P&G 80 years ago, like, launched the soap operas on radio, right? And we're a part of that. We've been in film and in the entertainment industry for a while, but we're now getting back to it to say, okay, what does that look like now? And what's the business model for that look like? And how do we show up, especially when our brands have stories that they want to talk about that are beyond just the superior functioning of the product, but what the brand wants to stand for.
Yeah, as I said earlier, that's an easy role. You've got an easy. I can't imagine. It's amazing.
It's a lot of fun though.
Yeah, no, I honestly, I mean, and the cool thing about it, right, is like, so many of your products are so universal. I was actually yesterday, I was like, just for fun, I'm going to go around and see like what P&G products I have, and I was like, I've always been a Tide girl. I only buy Charmin and Bounty. Downy, Febreze. I was like, I'm a Tampax, Crest. I mentioned before, my mom has me hooked on those Vicks sticks. And like Swiffer. I mean, literally, like, I couldn't live without Swiffer with my 6-year-old. But, you know, I was thinking like, I'm an advertisement for this panel, and you should just like follow me around. But I would be really curious to hear, like, what are some of your favorite brands, or maybe even your most purchased?
Yeah, you know, you mentioned one of them. I mean, I've been working with Tide for 6 years now. I love the Tide brand. It is such a fabulous product. It's an amazing brand. The partnership we have right now with our agency at Woven and MMK, and what we're creating, so that's as a marketer, but as a human doing it. My husband actually does most of our laundry, so he's the stain man. He knows how to get out every stain much better than I do. So I test half the things with him. But I love Tide as a product. I love Tide as a brand. I also, you know, I think Tampax Pearl and Always Infinity are like life-changing products for women. Like, it makes a massive difference. I am a Charmin Blue person, you know, and my Bounty Selecta size, so I can just use like this much because I use it all the time.
Me too.
And then recently, you know, things like SK2, I've been using Olay since I was, you know, 20, and, you know, SK2 is an amazing product. So I honestly, I'm a little bit like you. I feel like we better stop, because I could go on and on. I'm a P&G household because I believe in the products and the brands that we have, and I think they work really, really well.
Yeah, I totally agree. Also, side note, I mean, your husband probably uses it, or maybe you do for your daughter. I think you said she plays soccer, but I'm telling you that the Tide Sport is life-changing. My husband runs, like, and I don't know how, it's always like soaking wet, and I'm like, it gets the smell out, no problem. It's the best.
Well, and Tide Hygienic Clean is the one we just came out with, which is is even a deeper clean. So anyway.
Okay, I'm gonna check it out, because I'm not gonna lie, I like stock up on the sport. So
sport's great. It works.
So funny. So obviously P&G products we know we love, but like, how would you say you're more influenced, like, just like personally as a consumer? Are there like what affects your purchase decisions outside of maybe CPG specifically, but like any type of purchase decisions? Are there certain things that really influence you?
So I feel like because I am, P&G hardcore, like insights are what influence me as a consumer. When a brand like gets me, and understands what I need. I'm planning on a hike in the end of this month to the top of a mountain to sleep over in Tennessee. And it's going to be a little rigorous, and I needed to figure out how do I get some of the right gear. So the store I actually went to was REI. Now, I'd never been to REI, right? But I knew of REI. I knew what they like. I've been getting messages from them for I don't know how many years. None of it worked until I had a need. But when I had a need, like I knew who to go to. And then the experience in the store was amazing. Like this, fitting the right backpack and trying it on and having the way, like, so it just made me recognize that it's not always the thing that happens day in and day out. Sometimes it's that equity that's been built.
It's true.
Clearly that's what REI did for me. So that's just an example where I feel like when brands really understand what problem they're solving and can share and talk with I think as people, we just respond to that.
Yeah. No, well, I think that it's also like that, the timeliness of when, those ads are served to you and how it's applicable to what's going on in your life at that moment too, for sure.
That's right. Absolutely. Recency
Yeah.
helps.
It's true. I mean, I could get a million emails from something that I bought 3 years ago, and then it's like, oops, wait, I do need it again, that kind of thing. So sometimes it is just staying in front of them as well. Would you say that like directs your decisions and your role? Do you tend to take a certain approach when you're thinking about brands? Like, is it important about like that timeliness? Is that what you guys go for? Or like point of sale? Is that important to you, or is it more generally, since it's so broad?
Yeah, I think, if we think about how P&G markets broadly, point of sale is critically important. Recency is very important. Having the equity in the minds of the consumer. We believe in advertising. We believe advertising works. And honestly, the way that social and influencers and word of mouth is also really powerful. So there's never a one size fits all for a brand. All of these tools are just the right tools at the right time, depending on what you're trying to say. As I look at the future of advertising and say, what are we focused on? We've actually gotten into something that's pretty simple. We believe the future is all around being useful and being interesting. And if you can figure out as a brand how to be more useful or be more interesting, you'll win. And so that's, if I really look at what's affecting, how do we reach consumers new, it would be coming through that lens.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, people are consuming content at a rate so fast, and it's also so fragmented, right? Platform preferences, and then your products are super universal. I was trying to think, I was saying this to someone actually the other day. We were talking about P&G internally, and it was just like, it's like a college kid needing to clean their dorm room. It doesn't matter. There's parents and or kids doing laundry, or, young parents buying diapers, men and women shaving, a woman's first period. And then like my grandpa, he still buys toilet paper, right? Like, so it's like, it's so applicable, it's so universal, and you do need to reach people in different ways. So it's kind of hard. And I was thinking just about like, are there anything out of the box that you guys are doing, or really more importantly, like, how do you measure success when you are so universal?
Yeah, I mean, I'll give two examples on the be more useful. We've actually gone back to some more educational advertising, how to use the products, microbrand and the importance of hygiene that everyone has right now. We found that going back to say, this is it. This is how you use it. This is how you spread, like very, almost blocking and tackling of how to use the product has been, really, because consumers feel like they're being given information as opposed to being sold to. So that's like going you could say that's going 50 years back, right? But it's what people need right now. On the other side of being interesting, I look at Charmin as toilet paper, and, they CES a year ago when they came out with the roll bot, that was a robot that can bring you your toilet paper roll, speaking of refilling, or that we just did a Charmin BRB bot, like Be Right Back bot, where we created this, on a Zoom call, you could pre-record, AI of your face and have that react as people were talking, right? This is the brand is just leaning into better bathroom experiences in a fun, interesting way, right? So I think those are what makes what helps brands be interesting. Tampax has actually just done something in the gaming. They were talking about gaming and influencers, like in the gaming world, because women are so underrepresented, but yet are looking for brands to support them, and had a really honest conversation about periods and tampon use in the gaming ecosystem. So, or with, with gamers. So there's so many opportunities right now for brands to find ways to authentically connect with consumers. And it's just a matter of knowing who you are as a brand and what you want, and who you're trying to talk with, and finding places where that can create a shared moment, a shared vision, mission, or job.
That's awesome. That's hilarious. Also, we at Studio 71, we actually have a lot of gamers and esports content within our platform. And it's funny because it is, when you look at the stats, like women are heavily represented in the gaming space from a content consumption standpoint, but nobody ever talks about that. So that is really interesting. Are there any media or social media platforms that you and maybe your team are interested in for the future?
The furthest one out I'll go, instead of the closest one, is where the virtual worlds are growing, right? So Upland was one that I just got on, although I lost all my retail, my real estate, because I didn't get on every day. But it's like, it's this whole new, like, we look at Roblox and what the kids, what the Gen Alphas are doing, and virtual merchandise is something that they're spending their allowance on, right? They're not going and getting candy or buying Pokemon cards, right? They're buying V-merch. So that's a really interesting future space that I think we're going to see a lot more of. So not current platforms or traditional ones, but I think one of the places where it's going.
That's awesome. I'm never giving my child allowance. No, I'm just kidding. I thought we might pivot a little bit just in the essence of time, but as a woman in leadership, being at such a large CPG company, I thought it might be interesting. How about like the best advice you've ever gotten?
Yeah, the best advice is you can do everything, just not all at the same time. And we've talked about this. Like, there's been times where I've had to lean into my career and done a ton of travel, and I wasn't home a lot, and my kids were like, where are you now? Like, they had no idea where I was at, right? But it was that time in that moment that I had to do that. Then there's other times where I had to pull back and say, you know what, my family matters right now. Like, I took a 3-month sabbatical as my son was graduating from high schools, and we went to China for 3 weeks as a family. And it was just like, that's what I needed to do right then with the transition that our family was going through. So I think sometimes it's micro, like it's this weekend to that week, right? It doesn't necessarily be huge parts of your career, but that's the best advice, is trying to do everything. Then, your work is too high and your family's too high and you're just stressed out, and then both of them crash. And that happens still, even trying to manage priorities. But that was the best advice I got. And I think the second one I'd give you, and this was some women's leadership training that I took recently, was, for women, often we don't internally tell our own story, right? We're not as good as pitching ourselves, as talking about ourselves, as representing ourselves. And one of the biggest things was to find ways to tell your own story. Don't assume someone's going to talk for you. I mean, you put your head down and get your work done, yes, but then tell your story. Tell what you've done. Take credit for what you've done in a way that, is to your boss or to whomever you have to do that. So I think it's sometimes very hard for women to do that. And then the final one I'll give, that was actually part of that same training, was change the voice in your head. Sometimes our voice can be really critical of ourselves. And, if you change your voice, you change your mindset. And so how do you change the voice to not all the things you're not doing, but all the, like, hey, that worked, or I could do that, or this is how do we change that voice in our head so it's not critical and taking us down, but something that's helping us step forward and lean in?
Oh, I love those. I'm glad this is recorded. I'm taking them all myself. It's funny. I actually, personally, this is like a little tangent. So I was in media my whole career. Before Studio 71, I took a little hiatus and went to a company called The Second Shift. I didn't have flexible, but the idea was make work for you and give women, part-time project-based work. So they never stepped out or felt like they had to totally step back during, really difficult and pivotal times in their life. Because some companies are not, like, to be perfectly honest, the fact that P&G gave you that sabbatical is incredible, right? Like, more companies need to be leaning into that type of offering, especially when you've been there and you've shown that you're absolutely loyal and love the company, the brand, the career trajectory that you've been given. But I think that that's so important because it's hard, right? Like, there's always that conflict, like we were talking about earlier, and whether or not you're a mom or you're just a person, so you just anybody kind of needs that balance. And I think that's pretty amazing that they gave you that opportunity. I want to hear lots about China. And then I guess, to kind of wrap up before we get into questions, is there, in terms of equality, I know we were talking about your promotion recently. Again, huge congratulations. It's amazing. Not only the title, but, leading content innovation. Like, what does that mean? I think, the audience might like to hear about, like, how your team is structured and what they're doing, and then, what you're kind of thinking about.
Yeah, I mean, I've said a little bit, like, P&G is known to be, Mark has been talking a lot about constructive disruption, right? And this is one of the ways to do it. And, at P&G Studios, as we're calling it, we're looking to create stories that people want to hear about with partners in the industry, whether it's comedic or film or entertainment or journalism, that we could work with creatively and come up with stories that are sellable. Sellable content. So, a great example of this is The Cost of Winning that Gillette did with the Story Lab that went to HBO as one of their best sports content. And this was something that was connected with Gillette, and, raising the next generation of men is part of their mission and mantra. So we have these citizenship focus, our brands have these ambitions, and we see these stories and content and partnerships in the entertainment industry as a way to create new, interesting storytelling that's worthy of being on the streaming platforms and the channels to be viewed by consumers or by viewers who are looking for interesting storytelling that connects with what they're interested in. So, we're looking at how we and that's like in the content side. We're also creating platforms and shows like Can't Cancel Pride as a part of Pride Month, and it was a whole piece of it was a content and performance with iHeart that we executed against to create a moment in time where our brands could tell their stories, but also we could support the LGBTQ community. We were just in Tribeca and won Best Short Doc with Coded, which is also a film about LGBTQ visibility. So we're really trying to put the consumer first on how do we create stories they want to watch, right? They want to lean into, that authentically are part of what we believe is important, and stories that we think as a company we want to tell or that brands want to tell.
I love that. So I think we have about 9 minutes left. We have a couple of questions, so I'm going to throw them out. One, I like this one. If you could give your younger self a piece of career advice, what would it be?
It's a great question. I think my biggest advice would be do the scary stuff if it's something you really believe in. I think we can, when we're in a career, it's like, oh, what are they going to feel about me? Or what are they going to think about me? Or what if I fail? Or what if I can't do that? I would say do the scary stuff, do the things but because you think you might love it. Because you think you're like, I might love this, but maybe it's not the track that most people take, or maybe it's something that's undefined, or maybe it's something where you have to create it. But that's where you're going to get that's what I would be saying. Like, that's where my most interesting values have come from. That's where I feel most valued when I've done those things. And when I've played it safe or done what's expected, I think I always felt more disappointed in myself.
That's so true. I mean, and it's hard, right? Like, it's okay to fail. I feel like the last session was talking a little bit about that too. Like, if we were all perfect, we would never get anything done. And it's awesome to try something new and just see, what happens. All right, I have more. You got a lot of questions coming at you. So the next one, P&G has been a leader in cause-related messaging. I know we were just talking about some of that around social justice and representation. Seems the next challenge is moving to cruelty-free products. Any thoughts on how P&G plans to tackle that?
You know what, I would say I'm not the best person to answer that question. I know it's something that we have a lot of conscientious people who are working on that, and it's a really important part of how P&G and our research and development organization thinks. I wouldn't be the best person to be able to give the best answer on that.
Fair. This one might be interesting. So how, if at all, have like emerging D2C personal care brands affected P&G's business and marketing strategies? I know, there's all the, I'm going to call them Instagram brands that are happening that, so has that really affected your business or strategies at all?
It's definitely affected our strategies. And this is one of the things I really love about P&G is competition gets us going. Like it makes us better. And so what's really happened inside P&G is we've put a much more concerted effort against innovating in a different way. We call it lean innovation. Like how do we learn quickly, fail fast? We now have founders that create products within our company that can put out products that they believe in. We have innovation labs that are set up in every category that have these founders that are identifying breakthrough technology or ideas or products that they want to put forward. So it's actually created a whole new ecosystem for us on how we think about innovation. It's also caused us from a marketing standpoint to really figure out DTC, closed loop, how do we connect that data? How do we create that longer term relationship with the consumers? The importance of first party data. So it's honestly had a tremendous impact on how we think as a company. Some of our brands have had harder times than others with it, Gillette being one of them. But for us, we believe competition makes you stronger and helps you learn. And so that's how we approach it. It's like, where do we need to build a capability? Where do we need to win? Where's the new area that we need to make sure that our brands are capable and our marketers are able to do? And we now even have an entrepreneur track where people can lean into that if that's what they're more interested in. So it's expanded our horizons and made us think differently.
Yeah. And I mean, having that type of track too, it might be interesting from like an acquisition standpoint too, right? So like if there's a brand out there that's really on your radar or solves a challenge that maybe one of your products doesn't in the exact same way, it's a reason to, put it together in the portfolio. That's awesome.
Yeah. Bevel is a good example of that, right? It's a Black focused shaving brand, and it's been a great add to our company and has enriched us greatly. So yes, we're definitely looking out and doing that with these smaller brands.
Awesome. All right. I think this might be our last one, but are there any changes in marketing adopted during the pandemic that you think your team will continue to use in this hopefully post-pandemic world as we start to get back to normal? And do you expect any certain consumer behaviors for specific brands that may, have changed to remain that same way?
That's a loaded question, could probably be answered over 10 minutes. The first one is what's changed in marketing. Like, I do think there are obviously we've learned that we can work from home. Like no one was sure we could work from home and be as efficient. And we figured out, yes, we can. It can work. There's downsides, but it can work. I think we're seeing that the ramp up of click to buy of, e-commerce and shopping it's transformational. Use of QR codes. Like QR codes have been around for forever, and yet now they're kind of universally used. So you don't have to touch menus, So we see a lot of consumer habits that have been changed or made. Gaming is a habit that I don't think is going to change, that people got into it. Virtual experiences, as opposed to having to have just immersive live experiences, have totally taken off and create a whole bunch of opportunities like this, right? So, we now do training where before I might have 50 people in a room, and now I have 600 across the world because we just didn't think about doing it virtually. So I mean, I just listed off a bunch. I could go on, but yes, it has been transformational. I think there's things that we'll never go back to. And I do think consumer habits and practices have changed.
Yeah, no, I mean, it is really interesting to see like how, various industries are going back in a different way. And then also just, that expectation of what, the new normal is across. But we did similarly, we had a sales offsite where we never usually have our UK office join, and it was great. It was, a bit tricky from a time perspective, coordinating LA to UK, but, we figure it out.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. I think that maybe I'll give it another second if there's any other questions, but I think that might be all, Ryan.
Well, thank you so much, Kristen, for the time. Thank you for chatting with me. It was great.
Oh, it was awesome. It was such a pleasure. Thank you so much as well.
Thank you, Kristen. Thank you, Kimberly, for joining us today. It's crazy how fast, doesn't it go like this? And there's just me, like, hey, 40 minutes go by and then we're on to the next one. Would love to have spent.
Did I do it right?
No, that was terrific. And thank you for the audience sending in some questions too. That's always amazing. But seriously, thank you both for being here. And Kristen, you did a great job of carrying us through that conversation. Kimberly, thank you for your insights as well.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
Well, we have another conversation coming up here for our Women in Marketing event, and it's actually pretty cool. I get to introduce one of my coworkers here at Brand Innovators, who's going to be driving us through this next conversation. And we have, I guess I'll start out with Michelle Edgar, who's the founder and CEO of the XX Project, here with us, and my colleague, as I mentioned before, Elizabeth Osmelowski, is the VP of Community here with Brand Innovators, and Elizabeth will be our Sherpa to carry us through this conversation. We got Michelle on right now. Michelle, how you doing?
I'm good, guys. How are you? Excited to be here, speak to you all.
We're excited for you to be here as well. Things are moving along quite nicely for our summit right now. So that's fantastic news on our end, and a huge shout out to our team on the back end for making everything run smoothly. But Elizabeth, how you doing? It's been a while since we chatted. It was like 2 hours ago, I think.
Absolutely. We got kicked the morning off well today. So thank you, Ryan.
Absolutely. Well, Elizabeth and Michelle, I would love to turn things over to you. We're here on the back end if you need anything. And again, audience, don't forget, we got that Q&A chat window down there. Would love to hear some of your questions come in. We'll get to them at the last 10 minutes of the chat, but feel free to put them in at any point in time. And ladies, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Ryan. We'll see you soon. So how's it going this morning, Michelle?
Good. I just got done with the track earlier this morning, so made it just in time.
Right. Perfect. I know. So just for the viewers, obviously there's a little shift in schedule. Michelle and I were supposed to close out the day. She was gracious enough to work around that training schedule to get us in early today. So that's great. It's kind of a nice little lunchtime break. We have a little bit of a different spin on things than some of the other brand marketers you've heard from so far. But let me just quickly start with myself, because as Ryan said, I am his coworker. I am new to the Brand Innovators team, as is Ryan. I have joined recently as the VP of Community, and what that means is that I'll be leading the development of a bunch of new programs to support the amazing community that we have of brand marketers here of over 25,000. So that has been over the course of 10 years. So it's pretty amazing what Brand Innovators has done, and it's just a privilege to be part of this community, which Michelle has also joined. And personally, I'm tremendously excited for that, because I've always been drawn to building professional, strong networks of like-minded individuals, and also in my personal environment, right? And just doing things that I'm personally driven by, and as has Michelle. So it's fantastic to talk to her about multiple communities that she's built personally and professionally. And then, of course, on the theme of the day, in the second half of my career, personally, I found that creating networks and specific programs that support women marketers in particular at various points in their career, whether it's beginning or pivot points in careers, what are the opportunities that we can create new opportunities for personal and professional growth. I could just find that to be one of the most rewarding aspects of what we do. And I think Michelle does too. So we'll hear about that from her. And just mostly she's going to talk about her professional and personal journey, and how she's been focused on setting new, crazy and ambitious goals for herself and then making it happen. So I think that there's a lot to learn from it, and then also paying it forward through all those communities. So, and then we'll get practical advice on self-care, wellness, and that age-old question, the million-dollar question: how do you get balance in your work and professional life? So again, submit questions as we go, and we'll get to those at the end. So Michelle, I want to kind of start at the beginning. Let's start talking about like your talent as a musician, which led into a career as a concert pianist. And then, you know, what were the lessons you learned for discipline through practicing piano for many years of your early life?
Well, I was bit with the music bug at the age of 5. My mother and father saw a gift. I just was drawn to the piano and would sit there, barely able to sit at the piano, and just play for hours at a time. I was drawn to the instrument, and it was sort of my toy. Right. And, you know, from that, I decided to start training, and my parents just invested in my education and helping me excel, because that was what I was drawn to. And so I loved music. I was born with perfect pitch, and, you know, found my way, and I wanted to contribute to the world of music. And, you know, that's how I found myself in the music business for many years, which I still am part of. So I think, you know, just the passion, follow your passion and know what you're good at. And that was, you know, I was too chicken to be a concert pianist. I went to Northwestern. I had a double major in piano performance and journalism with a minor in music business. So I think I utilized all my educational skills and degrees. But, you know, I wanted to, I knew I had a business mind, and there was more than just being a concert pianist myself, because I was worried about that kind of job security. But I knew that my completion and training as a concert pianist would allow me to help work with talent in another kind of capacity, of really being able to relate and help artists in a better way. So that's how I decided to, you know, sort of shift into my contributions in the marketing and music business. And I think the training and that kind of discipline is what set the foundation for my entire career. And it has been, you know, my success in my career, because, you know, practicing 5 hours a day and having to get on that stage and perform for an hour, there's nothing like it. And there's no cutting corners. So you have to really have it be second nature and pay attention to all those details. And that's a great skill set that has helped me along my entire journey professionally.
Right. Because it's so critical in the marketing world, and specifically dealing with musicians across and brands across multiple different venues and tours and all of that. There is a lot of detail to be managed in that. So you're really keen and sharp in that sense. That makes sense. So tell us a little bit more about the types of work you did in the music industry.
Well, I've, you know, been fortunate to see a lot of different sides of the business. I've worked at a record company twice. I've been on the management side. I was also a branding agent, and have worked at a creative brand agency. And now in my current position, more in the digital, you know, content space, in live stream and podcasting. So I've been very fortunate, because I strategically wanted to really understand all the different facets of the business. And I've been, you know, fortunate to work with incredible talent, emerging, established talent, helping them build their brands and businesses, and help them really market it and align them with, you know, authentic partnerships, and execute those partnerships to, you know, find the best marriages and help, you know, impact culture and their growth and the brand growth, and really doing some exciting, you know, collaborations along the way.
Oh, absolutely. And so that, I mean, you spent pretty much about 10 to 15 years in that side of the business, it sounds like. And then you made a pretty big shift a few years ago in launching the XX Project. And you co-founded that with some pretty inspiring women, Soledad O'Brien, Beth Comstock, both very accomplished in their respective careers. So what brought you to that moment from the music industry to creating this project? And actually, I'm gonna pause that, because I do want to talk before we get back to that topic. I wanted to make sure on the music topic, we talked about the nonprofit organization you founded, which was Music Unites. So you have not left the music industry either in that sense. So do you want to talk more about that?
Yeah, I started off my career graduating from Northwestern in journalism. And I was covering the beauty business, and it was when every single artist was signing an endorsement deal in the beauty space back in 2005. And it was an exciting time, and that actually was the learning and foundation to then be putting those deals together. So as a young journalist right out of school, I was writing 5 articles a week and just grinding. And the beauty business is an incredible business. And at that point, I realized my music passion and giving back and supporting the underserved was not being met. So I was very entrepreneurial. And at 25, I decided to start a music nonprofit, Music Unites, to empower youth through music and fund after-school music education programs. And I believed in the power of mentorship. And if you change a child's life and give them, a wider perspective of where they can land professionally and motivate them to go to school, you can transform lives. So that's how I started with Music Unite. So I was a journalist by day covering the beauty business. And then by night, I was raising money to fund children's choirs, all sorts of after school programs to orchestras in Compton, and still working in Compton now over 10 years. I actually have an amazing program happening with TBWA Chiat, teaching students about advertising in the creative field. They're on a 6-week program that just started 2 weeks ago. So I've been very fortunate, and that was kind of my first start in the music business through my passion for philanthropy. And that made me then realize I wanted to pivot and work in the strategic partnerships and branding world for artists and, serve the music business and see how to really build brands and help launch artists' careers and find the right opportunities for their music and what they're looking, their messaging in culture. So I decided at that pivot point, when I decided to leave the journalism space and enter the music business, I found that there wasn't an opportunity for women to gather together regularly. I would find myself always trying to go to these summits and whatnot, but I wanted a consistent community where I could really contribute and come together with other thought leaders and really talk about relevant topics and hear from best-in-class speakers. And that's when I started the XX Project. I'd heard Soledad O'Brien speak at AdColor, which a dear friend of mine, Tiffany, started very, very early on. She had me speak at one of the first summits. And I was so inspired by Soledad. I'm like, that is the woman who embodies XX. We must feature her. And I asked her to do it. My first talk, it was at Soho House in New York. And we just gathered, we had these salons where around 50 to 100 people came together monthly. And we showcased all different women leaders, Beth Comstock, Pat Mitchell, to Eve, the artist. And we talked about what's happening in business and, C-suite advancement, how to break glass ceilings and innovation in various industries, and built this vibrant community that really empowers women, gives them resources and tools, and helps really get business done and find true collaborators.
That's fantastic. And also, I mean, that's evolved over time. It's not specific to the media or entertainment industry or music industry. It's now really kind of growing across industries and kind of having that collaboration across them. And it's providing a platform for all these conversations to start happening, and then also deals to be made when you're in alignment. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. We've recently showcased diversity inclusion topics, social impact, career advancement. A lot of women are pivoting careers. So, we had our first Power Women in Sports in March for Women's History Month, which I was very excited about, as sports is a newfound passion of mine. So we're really diverse. I want to make sure we have a lot of female founders to the venture community and just the best in class women, because I believe the best ideas don't just come from looking at your specific industry, but all different industries. Just like the women today at the summit you guys are putting on, it's the best in class across so many amazing companies.
Right. And like this community, the XX Project gives people an opportunity to, ask questions in a completely safe space and, look for funding or get different points of views if you are trying to start up a new entrepreneurial endeavor, it sounds like.
And it is that deal making behind the closed doors where you could ask those authentic conversations and questions. And a lot of, we don't record them because we want the real questions to be asked and women feeling free to really engage and get what they need to help them in their respective, industries and career journeys.
Right.
And a lot of women have found jobs through it. It's exciting to see that kind of cyclical give. It's not just, taking and going in and just getting what you need, but the giving, get the gift that keeps on giving.
And sort of the supports, it's creating a support system too, to push past any fears potentially, or overcome imposter syndrome. Are those some of the tools that you're seeing kind of women proactively co-mentor each other with?
Absolutely. And I think, sharing intel on how to get your dream job, or, sometimes when you're at a halt, how to get out of that, pattern and to see bigger and better. And a lot of women, approach the speakers, and everyone's very into supporting one another, because that's the kind of culture and environment we create that really fosters that kind of authentic, relationship building. It's not just how to get a deal done tomorrow, but how to really help one another, or, how did you do that? And really providing that roadmap to help one another.
Right. And again, creating a place to see things from a different perspective, or recognize that you're in a toxic environment and it may not be the best thing, and it might be time to kind of step back and reevaluate where you are and where you want to be.
And I think a lot of women, don't know how to ask for that raise, or don't know how to fight, or don't know how to negotiate. And I think that's what I really want, or how to get that dream job, or, how to position yourself and rebrand yourself, or finding those, personal coaches. And we're big into health and wellness, and I have a lot of experts who really talk about that. So finding that balance and the best in class women who can help you, because it's not just how to get that C-suite job, but what's the journey and process to get there to be your best you.
Right. And probably that extends to as things change in both your professional and personal life too. I mean, obviously, people have to deal with that pivot point for a lot of different reasons, whether it's personal issues or professional changes and being laid off and all of that. So it is kind of good to surround yourself with people who can help you through that, right? And shift it. So how has the XX project helped you personally in terms of building out the community of trusted female advisors?
I mean, it's helped me by so many, hearing the amazing stories from the amazing thought leaders that have taken their time to spend with us, and the advice and wisdom along the way. So I think, it's helped me every single conversation. I take something different away, whether it's managing my finances or giving me the courage to, take that next step. I think every single conversation and the partnerships and collaborators and the women that I have in the community, we all learn from each other. And a lot of people are supporting one another, and every friendship, it's more than just a deal that gets done. It's a real friendship and fueling each other and taking your tribe along with you. So I'm grateful for those real authentic relationships that I know will stand the test of time. And I'm so appreciative that a lot of these power women took the time when it was almost 10 years ago. So I was in my late 20s when I started this. It was before Me Too. And, I'm very grateful that they believed in my vision and got behind me. So I'm excited to, see as the world opens up, what's next. Is it a summit? Is it a getaway? Is it, what kind of experiences? We just started coming back to putting together our first Mondays in person, because we've been fortunate to have this pandemic time, because we've been able to really scale and impact women across the country with, 2 events digitally a month. But excited to now bring this hybrid format and have our first dinner coming this Monday. But looking forward to inviting more members and hearing what women really want, and listening to, our members and getting them what they need in this community, and facilitating those introductions and relationships.
Right. And it's so fascinating. And obviously Brand Innovators did the same, going from a live events business to scaling to that virtual pivot very, very quickly. And the opportunities, like you said, it opens up to just expand the community. It's still great to go back to those in-person events and kind of have this hybrid model. So we're all very excited for that, certainly. But yeah, it's just one example of how you can reach a lot more people through these networks that you're building. Mm-hmm. So fantastic. So yeah, shifting gears a little bit. I mean, I think that is a good point to talk about, as the pandemic shifted so many things for all of us, just personally and professionally, it gave a lot of people time to kind of stop, think, reevaluate with a lot less distractions. A lot of people are making career shifts. A lot of people turn to health and wellness. And you certainly did both of those things at a very high level. So I definitely want to talk about the 2 major changes that happened for you during the pandemic. First, the decision to go back to school at this point in your career, and to go to law school and make a big career pivot. And 2, this newfound dedication to fitness through competitive running, which has certainly transformed your life. You've talked a lot about it, and you've set some pretty ambitious new goals for yourself. So let's get into that.
I think sometimes it's unfortunate that, you have to have something that stops you or is your aha moment where you're like, I have to change, whether it's burnout, whether it's a death, a divorce, or something that, or, you lose your job. It's unfortunate that those moments happen, but sometimes when you find a silver lining in those moments, it catapults your life. I certainly, working in the music business and entertainment business, working with artists, being out 5 nights a week, at many of times till all hours of the night, at concerts, I remember throughout my entire career trajectory, what it's like to burn out. And I have, not always knowing how to overcome those hurdles. And, basically COVID hit, and I had lost a parent in February of 2020. And it was very difficult. And then I came back to LA in early March, and I felt really at a low. Personally, I just energetically felt like I was depleted. And I didn't know what to do, but I knew something was not right and I needed to change my life. And, the silver lining is my stepfather's last words to me were, will you move on with your life already? Gasping for air in January. A few weeks later, I'd lost him. And I had to sit with those words, and those are very difficult words to sit with. And I have amazing parents, both my mother and father, who were there supporting me in so many ways and have really contributed to who I am as a woman, as a leader, as a daughter, and instilled really strong values. But I knew that something had to shift. So I turned to, for the first time in my career, it's hard when you're working at big companies. I decided to take that 1 hour of commuting in the morning and the evening and spend it on my time. So every morning I would wake up, I would turn on my Spotify playlist and start walking. And every evening when I finished my day, I would, just start walking. And soon I started 7 to 8 miles a day. But I decided that drive commute time will be my me time. And for the first time in my career, I set really disciplined boundaries. And I sat with those words thinking, what do I need to do to change my life? And every day, this was one of the hardest times in my life. I was, just energetically really at a low. I just shifted, and every day I got a little stronger, one step forward. And after 3 months of this walking turned into running in my local neighborhood, and I'd lost 30 pounds. And at the same time, I was going through a personal transition with a divorce, and it was a tough time, that on top of losing a parent. But you have to, get clear, get stronger, and decide what are the right decisions to help pick those pieces up. And what's that new life? What are you trying to manifest in your future? And I knew that I wanted a new skill set as a woman looking to advance in, corporate America, in leadership roles to the C-suite. I felt that a law degree would really help me be a stronger negotiator, deal maker in business. And, a wonderful opportunity. I think COVID has opened a lot of our eyes in that timing that we have. And UCLA had this wonderful master's program that they started for, working professionals who are looking for, the skill set of, legal skill set, and not looking to practice law with to be an actual lawyer, but wanting to use those skills in business. And it was the perfect timing. And I decided to go for it. And I applied, I got in to law school. And it was really serendipitous that around that same time that I got in, I was also manifesting what could it feel like to be at UCLA and be a student, and what would I feel like to jump on that track and just start running, because I got bored with doing 2 hours in Westwood every single day. After 3 months, it got a little bit mundane, but I had really good Spotify playlists, so I'm happy to share that with anyone here if you're interested.
Very motivational.
I manifested, something on that track shifted something in me. And I ran to heal. I ran for joy. I ran to just fight to get through a difficult time. And on the track was my coach, who was instrumental in this pivot, who believed in me, who felt that I could take my talent and skill. He saw something in me, and we decided to, collaborate. And I was so fortunate to have someone like that who always believed in me, who had my back, and to help me discover a whole new, me that I didn't know existed. I was never an athlete. I was the band camp concert pianist nerd. I never, played sports. I tried to do basketball and I sprained my finger once, and that was really it because it took me out of piano. So it's amazing when you challenge yourself, and if you change your mind, coach says, you could change your life. And I was just trying to change my mind and live a healthier, life, and, find a new direction, a new calling. And I didn't have this massive transformational
It wasn't your roadmap, right? It's just one step at a time.
I was brave enough to push through. And when that door opened, I just, got more informed and just pushed and just threw a few things out there. And that's how I ended up finding the athlete in me and started competitively running. I'm about to do my 8th race at the national championships in 2 weeks in Iowa. I'm competing for my 2nd All-American title in the 100 meters. So working super hard to take my athletic ability to the next level, training 4 hours a day, and also with law school, finishing my 1st year. And I have 1 more year to go, and I'll be walking in graduation as I turn 40. So it's never too late to, find or, perfect a skill set. You just have to be brave enough to plow through, and also find the right support system who can really help you when you don't see something in yourself. And I attribute, a mentor of mine, Lavinia Erico, the co-founder of Equinox, to push me to apply to law school when I was going through a difficult period with, my personal life. And she said, no, put that law school application in, and forever grateful for that. And then my coach for seeing something in me as an athlete and working with me day in and day out. I train. So sticking with me. And I think, that athletic training has really shifted the way I do business, the way I, it's not just business, it's my life. Everything about my life has changed in the routine and how I live my life through being an athlete.
Right. And again, it goes back to that discipline. You're being very efficient with your time, very structured with your time, and you feel empowered to say no to things that ultimately don't help you get to your goals. I mean, sounds very clear. I mean, that's how people are successful, right? In business, in life, and trying to find that perfect work-life balance. But it does come with sacrifice too. I mean, what are some of the sacrifices that you've had to make?
Time is all we have. So what do you want to do with that time is the big question. I think that, apologies for the honking over there. Hopefully it will stop soon. But, I think there's lots of sacrifices. I have to be in bed a certain hour each night by 9:30 in order to train 5 a.m., 6 a.m. I'm on the track. So making sure your body has sufficient rest. And, that requires a certain amount of sacrifice in terms of adjusting your lifestyle, to train like I do. I take the morning, which is really my me time. I honor that every single day. And that's kind of like my healing and peace. And I know that I'm loving myself, and no one can take that time away from me. And so much, so many years in my career, I said, oh, I'll do this. I'll take the call at 8 a.m. or 7 a.m. or 6 a.m. I really carved out that time for me. And then working a full-time job on top of then going to law school on average, sometimes 2 to 3 hours after school, 3 days a week. There's only a finite amount of time you have. So Coach gave you this analogy, which I really love. Wait, hold on, let me just close that because it's really
fine.
1 second.
Distracting you. The things we struggle with in this new virtual environment, we're all dealing with it, and it's all okay. So
apologies about that.
Hey, perfect.
But Coach gave me a very good analogy where you have a plate, and there's only so much you can put on your plate. And every day we have a decision to make. What do we put on that plate? And does that help us with our immediate goal, and really defining what's long and short term of those goals. Because before I would just quickly, I got to put it on, I got to figure it out. And then I was not as strategic, and I was always a hard worker and, very dedicated, did above and beyond. But, sometimes you have to shift the strategy to be more effective and efficient in business, and really setting your boundaries and knowing when to say no. So, I've understood that, going to law school, working full time is not easy, and there's sacrifices. In the weekends, I'm studying, that after work, I'm in class. So, it gives you certain nights where, you might not be able to do the things you typically want to, but I think, that kind of self-love, both, what you're giving yourself intellectually as well as physically is more love than, you can ever ask for. So I think that's like such a gift to give myself as I, embark on this exciting next chapter. As I turn 40, I'm living my healthiest, strongest self. And one thing has really, you have to find that system and that equilibrium. And I think the morning routine that I've set up allows me to really fuel through my day and give me that energy, and knowing what you can and can't do, and being patient with yourself and communicating with your loved ones and explaining, because sometimes we feel so much guilt about it, but you have to just explain that, you're doing this for this amount of time. It's 2 years of how many years of life that we have. So I think, just being able to assess where you are in life and setting up those systems, it's good to reevaluate at any given point. So, I think you have to not just do what you did 10 years ago. Every few years, obviously, if you have a family, if you're a single parent, you have to reassess your system as you do your business life. You get evaluated on your performance. So same thing in your personal life, which I wasn't really doing. I thought I was, but I wasn't really intentional about my decision making.
And I think that's often hard to see for a lot of people to see in their younger years. So I think that is kind of like the big takeaway for people throughout their careers, really be strategic and take the time to stop and reassess if it's working for you, if it's not, if you're making sacrifices in your family life that aren't paying off rewards, right? Mm-hmm. If it's a short-term sacrifice that'll pay a long-term reward, like going back to school, then absolutely you should make that a strong consideration, and then figure out how to make it work within your own ecosystem.
Mm-hmm. And knowing when something's not working and knowing when to let go, because you have to create space. You can't just work. You have to create space for that balance. Yes, it is sacrifices. I don't get to be with my friends very often as when I know it's school time and working and accomplishing what I'm looking to do as an athlete and my contributions in the sports business. It is personal sacrifices. So, setting those goals and reassessing them at any given period, and finding a support system and people that you look up to who you can share insight and understand how you can shift your life and make those plans and have someone hold you accountable, really write it out.
And that's true. And like you said, you have your childhood friends maybe who you're still with, and they understand that you need to take this time for yourself. But what you're also doing at the same time is building these communities and forming these new relationships with people kind of in the moment with your current passion too. So you're kind of expanding that network and just getting a broader point of view. And so yet again, you're doing another nonprofit launch associated with track and field. So do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'm very honored to have an amazing coach, and it's been his dream for many years to create this One Love Track Club, bringing track to all ages, all stages, this community-wide affair to empower lots of people, not just, the best in class athletes, but to find, to reach their athletic potential. And we're very excited to launch this with a new track experience. As we go back to the new norm this fall in life. What does this look like on the track? So we're hoping to, everyone from us to, parents and all communities, students from Beverly Hills to Compton, hopefully maybe one day do the One Love, track experience on the UCLA campus. That would be a dream come true, but really excited to see how to re-envision and create this new vibrant community and culture through just people looking to live their best lives. I think track has taught me a lot about how to overcome many of life's hurdles and has made me a stronger businesswoman, a better person, a more patient person, because I've had to put it all out there and really learn the process and the preparation and the discipline, which, I've learned on a whole new scale. So I'm excited to share that journey, because you don't have to be a competitive sprinter to love track, but to, just be inspired and motivated and live a healthier life and, more authentic life. And that's what we hope to do, and hope to reach a lot of kids who don't have access in their, communities. I'm really excited. I'm running this Saturday in Compton, a district that I've worked over 10 years for my charity. So excited to go there this Saturday to do a test run for what I'm going to be doing in 2 weeks out in Iowa. So, it's interesting how life, when you're on your path, just the doors open, and excited to bring a lot of people on this, journey, and to find, inspiration through what we're trying to do and create through a community of people looking to live their best lives.
And that's fantastic, just to think about how all that started with was just, one step per day, one work per day. And just to see where that's going now and how you're giving that back. So I am going to drop the link to your GoFundMe campaign for the One Love Track and Field Club, because I think that's so much and such a great use of your limited and very precious time. So it's so great to hear you giving back in that way, for sure.
And the proceeds from that is going to go to our first track race out here in Los Angeles, probably in August, September, and also, to get the business started and to hopefully offer some scholarships to, some underserved communities and students who need it. So we're very excited to get this all going.
That's fantastic and super inspiring, right? I don't know that I want to revisit my high school track days as a pole vaulter at this point in my life, but never know. Stranger things.
It's okay. I'm very scared of the hurdles. So coach has me practicing on them a little bit, but I'm still very, very scared of them.
Right. So we just have a few minutes left. So I do want to open it up for questions, just to see if we have any coming in. But I will just ask one more final. You did talk a little bit about other mentors and role models for you as you've kind of gone through these changes. You talked about the co-founder of Equinox has been very instrumental. Who else do you look up to professionally and or athletically?
Mm-hmm. I look up to Sylvia Rohn, who has known me for a very long time and, gave me the opportunity to work for her at Epic. She's been an amazing leader in the music business and beyond, and grateful for the opportunity to work under her leadership to really see how a true leader walks the walk. I was honored to work with her at a time when she was honored for City of Hope with the Spirit of Life Award, and helping her with that entire campaign was near and dear to me, as I have several family members who suffer from cancer. And I just think it was such an honor to help out and see how she leads her team. And I think there's so many other amazing women that I've had the opportunity to work for and to be their agent, even Deborah Lee from BET, Bozoma St. John at Netflix. I think you have to see what inspires you about every single, woman that, and, is it their leadership? Is it, something personal? What is it that really draws you in? And there's some people that I haven't met yet that I'm really inspired by. As an athlete, I love Allison Felix. I think she's just such a force. And as a mother, what she's fighting for. And I'm really excited to see her as she embarks as a founder now. And she took the opportunity as she goes to Olympics to start her own business, and for mothers, for women. I think it's an incredible time, and I'm certainly going to get behind that in full force. And I can't wait to purchase some of those products. Naomi Osaka as an athlete, it's incredible what she's built. I can't wait to see the Netflix documentary come out next Friday. It looks incredible. But these are women that are, looking to, they're true trailblazers. They're business women, they're investors, they're founders, and they're really multifaceted. So I love seeing women who really take risks, who, pave the way for the rest of us. And I think that's what's important to take our team there's no I in team. And so we have to always remember to share our resources, share our knowledge, and take one another along the journey, because that's how we can get there. And I love thinking about the analogy. My coach also, he's very good with these, but there's a ladder. And so how far can you climb on that ladder? And don't look down, just keep going up. And, you need the right support group and leaders who believe in you to help, climb to that next level in life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And whenever you're faced with challenges, I think the most important takeaway is to just be resilient and show up, even if you don't feel that way. Like just show up at the most bare minimum level, and it could turn into a great day. You don't really know, but if you have that support network and that system that's behind you, you feel a lot more confident about that.
And be vulnerable. Be willing to say, I don't know it all, and ask those questions.
Wow. Well, that's super fantastic and very motivating and inspiring, especially as we head into the Olympic time and get to watch all of those impressive athletes. And we certainly wish you the best of luck in your endeavor at the trials. So yeah, this has been fantastic, and I really appreciate the time. We're so lucky to have you. And so again, good luck with everything, and just let us know how we can, again, support the XX Project. You've dropped some great links, and if you're in the area, that would be great. And check out musicunites.org as well. And thank you again, Michelle. And with that, we will bring Ryan back in.
Thank you so much, everyone. Hope to hear from you too. Feel free to reach out. I included my information.
Perfect.
Amazing. Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, Michelle. And thank you for dropping in your email and your Instagram handle in our chat window. Check it out, everybody. Give her a follow, see what's going to be happening over the next few weeks, months, years. Thank you both.
Thanks, Ryan.
Amazing. So we are at the end of our day. I know we've covered a lot, but doesn't mean that this last session is going to give us anything less than the best. And that's because we have two fantastic speakers who I would love to introduce. We have Sandra Moerch, the Chief Content Director, Purpose and Sustainability Marketing with SAP. And we have our terrific moderator, Rachel Tuffney, the EVP of Dianomi. Am I saying that correct?
Yes, correct.
Perfect. Awesome. How are you two doing today?
Very well, thank you. How are you?
I mean, we're learning a ton. I'm being a sponge, just taking everything in and listening. So, huge shout out to all of our speakers thus far. And I know we're super thrilled to have you to close out our event today. But for all of our listeners, again, chat window down at the bottom there, please click it. Please talk amongst yourselves and please ask your questions. And Rachel and Sandra, I'll turn things over to the two of you.
Thank you so much, Ryan. And thank you so much, Brand Innovators team. It is always a pleasure to be here. And Sandra, great to see you.
Great to see you as well. I know we had a little bit of a fire drill this morning with my internet outage and figuring out whether I could join or not, but I'm so happy that I'm here and we're the last session of the day. How exciting.
I love it. So poor Sandra woke up with internet outage in Honolulu and all while navigating a 3-year-old at home. So, I mean, seriously, good start to the morning. So we have got 35 minutes and I am so excited to be talking to you. So I think what a really great place to start would be if you could put a bit of insight, your background and your journey. And it really is a journey so far.
Yes, no, I'd be happy to. And you mentioned it already, but first of all, I'm a proud mom. My most important job to date that I tell everyone, including my boss, to my 18-month-old Skylar. And I have a second one on the way right now. So I don't know exactly what we're in for because it's already a handful with one. But then I look at people who have like 5 or 6 and I'm like, okay, you can't complain. But yeah, just about me, I'm a Danish citizen, but I consider myself very much a global citizen. I've lived in more than 10 countries by now and across 3 continents. And currently, as you also mentioned, our family lives in the beautiful island of Oahu in a city called Honolulu.
I'm so jealous.
Some of you might have heard of it, but it's in the middle of the Pacific. And every time, I look at the Ko'olau Mountains here that are actually just to the left of me or the ocean, the Pacific Ocean, breathe in that amazing ocean smell. I know that something is just so much bigger than ourselves, right? And it's really the environment, Mother Nature. And I think that's also something I've always had in my DNA my purpose and passion around sustainability, and it's not just sustainability environmentally, it's really economically and societally. Sustainability is really core to who I am, and what I'm really excited about is that it's becoming essential to every human being now. It's not just something that there's a niche group that we call hippies or whatever who care about the environment or whatnot. It's every person on the planet that has to care now and is excited to care. So which actually matches my day job really well that I haven't even touched on yet. But I'm the Chief Content Director or lead content for purpose and sustainability marketing at SAP, which basically means figuring out holistically what are all the investments that SAP has across the globe. We operate in 180 countries and have more than 100,000 people working in our organization, and they're all working on multiple projects, as you can imagine. So my job is to make sure that we're telling the holistic story of what we're doing, both on a global level, but also down to the regional levels. And it's a really exciting job. I get to interface with a lot of folks from around the world. And something that always gets me really excited is when I get to work with SAP employees who are not only doing their day job, but they're running like nonprofits on the side, that they're connecting to whatever they're doing in their day job. And something, that I've been a big advocate for a long time is the side hustle. So not only having your day job, but having something on the side. So whether that be a nonprofit, and I have some examples from my team alone. I have a person who runs a nonprofit. I have a person who has a board game company, and I have a person who has a writing business next to her day-to-day work, right? And I think those are really important aspects of just being fulfilled at your daytime work as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's fantastic. It would be great if you could elaborate, because I mean, you really have lived around the world, from Denmark. I'm not going to mention the soccer yesterday, to
very tough.
to Japan, to New York. Could you talk a little bit about sort of the gender equality and how potentially this differs culturally?
Yes, and I am happy that you're not diving too deep into the soccer, even though I know your home country beat my home country last night, UK versus Denmark. But we were also quite ambitious to play against the UK. The UK has always beaten us, and I think the last time we even reached the semifinals was in 1992, if my memory is correct.
Beaten us, because I think it's been like 50 years for the UK. So, anyway.
Yes. But congratulations on that front. But yeah, it is true. I've lived in different places, and I think a lot of people nowadays, as we're becoming more global, get exposed to different cultures, right? Whether you actually get to live in the countries or you get to work in a global company where you're exposed to these different cultures. But from my perspective, the hierarchies and the biases and the discrimination look very different, and the especially three particular countries that I lived in: Germany, Japan, and America. In Germany, I would often be perceived as a secretary to my peer who happened to be 10 years senior to me in age, but organizationally we were on the same level. And in Japan, I was able to get away with a lot because I was considered what they refer to as gaijin, so a foreigner. But my Japanese female peers really struggled with having a voice at the table, and often told me that they felt Japan really needed to import a lot of female foreigners to change up that dynamic, right? And change up how the voices were represented at the table. But it was a very different culture, and it also, you get a lot of empathy for these different people around the world as they struggle with either more bias or even less bias in some places, right? I'm from Denmark, which is very non-biased when it comes to especially the gender gap. And other countries that have less of a gap to bridge, and then there are countries that just have huge gaps still, and we need to bridge them all.
No, 100%. And I'm going to go slightly off script actually for a second, but what would you, if you went back in time, what would you give advice to Sandra, who was just starting out in Denmark? Is there anything that would spring to mind that you would like to take back in time to say, this is something that I wish I had known, or sort of?
That is such a good question. And I think just your ability to be assertive and your ability to say no. which also comes with experience and confidence, right? So I think a lot of people, as they kind of progress in their careers, that becomes a common narrative, I think, for a lot of especially women, because we start out by being very accommodating to everyone, trying to do everyone's jobs, trying to, say yes to everyone, please everyone. But, the older I get and the more experience I gain, I realize, just the importance of being able to say no, and you can say no in great ways. Like you can say no in nice ways. It doesn't have to be, the strict no's, and because then we face, another big bias around women being, all kinds of words, right? And it's, and I think, that's a really, really important piece of advice that I wish I would have known earlier on in my career.
Very good advice.
Because I worked a lot of hours in the beginning of my career.
Me too. I know what you mean. So SAP, it really is a power brand. And, I think a lot of people, including myself, has really thought about SAP being sort of a developing software. Could you give us a little bit more sort of insight in your own words as to exactly what SAP does and how it kind of impacts people's lives?
I love that you asked this question, because there was actually a really fascinating survey that we conducted, I believe 5 years ago, from the SAP brand and marketing team, that actually informed us that some people, or actually a lot of people, thought that SAP is that button, on your remote control that translates everything into Spanish. So when they saw our brand, they would be like, oh, it's that button on the remote control, right? Because it's much more of like a household item, a remote control, right? And then people would see that in a different context. But SAP, as you mentioned, is an amazing and highly valued brand. And to be honest, a lot of people don't know what we really do other beyond developing software. So just to provide some context around the scope and scale of what SAP systems do, is that, one of the biggest metrics or scalable things that we do is that we touch 77% of the world's transaction revenue. So that means that, everything that you're exposed to that is a transaction or has a transactional value has a 77% likelihood of having gone through an SAP system.
Wow.
And that number is substantial. And what that means to you as an individual is that when you woke up today, you've probably already been touched by SAP a number of times without even knowing it, from the coffee that you picked up at your local coffee shop to the gas or electricity you pumped into your car. There's countless of experience in our daily lives that are powered by these large enterprise software systems. And chances are, a large percentage of those have been powered by SAP. So at the end of the day, we're in the business of making the world run better and improve people's lives. That's really been our mission from the very beginning of when our company was founded. And the whole notion of helping the world run better is because through technology and through systems that work, right, we can accomplish incredible things. And I think COVID has been, an incredible, but also really difficult use case to look back at, but technology has really been essential for us to survive these past 18 months. Both in procuring equipment for hospitals to just staying connected like we are right now in a virtual setting. So yeah.
That's amazing. That's incredible. Could you give us all a little bit of a picture of what purpose and sustainability content means to SAP and how it can be used as a marketing tool?
Yes, I'd be happy to. It's such a good question. I think in our work, we tend to look at purpose as the aspirational aspect of purpose and sustainability as the activation. So the two A's. Purpose should really be, what we dream and aspire to do. And then sustainability is how we're doing this in action. And purpose and sustainability has also evolved tremendously over the course of the past 6 years, where I've had the privilege to work very closely on these topics. And when we first started out, it was mainly a programmatic effort and a brand exercise, but now it's being embedded into everything we do, from product development to how we sell, to how we account, to how we measure, and to how we manage our own operations, also very importantly. The urgency and the relevancy and traction it's getting at the highest level of organizations, both at SAP, but we also see it in the industry as a whole, gives me just incredible hope that we'll be able to move mountains, which is what we're required to do in order to reverse the immense environmental challenge, especially that we're facing right now.
That's amazing. That's incredible. I love that. I'd love us to lean into how your team is helping to promote the SA business and its value into new audiences. What type of audiences are you reaching out to you, and how do you decide on the best way to engage them?
That's also such a great question, because I think in the beginning when we embarked on this journey around communicating what we were doing from our purpose and sustainability aspect, we were just trying to reach everyone, right? And we were trying to reach people, citizens and civil society and customers and partners and everyone. And of course, we do need to reach a lot of people, but
Yes.
I would say that the most important stakeholders to get in the same room right now to scale, SAP's sustainability efforts are 440,000 customers. I would say government and policymakers are really important when it comes to sustainability. Academia is really important for educating the next generation, making sure that we're uplifting, the next chapter or the next era of business, and then social entrepreneurs have also proven to be just such an integral stakeholder in coming up with new innovative ideas and business models on how to conduct business. Something that I always say is that we're only as sustainable as our ecosystem. So SAP can be, just as sustainable as we want to, but if our 440,000 customers are not sustainable, then that's on us too, right? It's our responsibility to power them with technology that can enable them to become more sustainable. And one thing that I also like to say is that we all have to board the same train, and our destination has to be a sustainable economy, environment, and society.
No, I totally agree. I read a lot of the content is built around the UN sustainability goals. Can you explain a little bit about that and perhaps give some context on how SAP created the alignment with the UN?
Yes, no, I'd be happy to. And just, I guess, a quick info on what the sustainable development goals are. So there's 17 of them. It's a framework that was developed by the United Nations. It was actually an evolution of the Millennium Goals that were launched back in 2000 that never, unfortunately, got a lot of traction. So they rebranded it in 2015 because there's more urgency than ever to reach sustainable development by 2030 was the deadline that was set up. And these goals range from anything from climate action to gender equality, to inequalities as a whole, to quality education, to alleviating poverty around the world, and just all these massive scale problems that we have around the world. And since the inception in 2015, SAP has been on board as a company. We were actually one of the first corporations to sign up for the goals. Our CEO at the time went to the UN headquarters in New York City with the German Chancellor Angela Merkel, given that SAP is a German company, if I didn't mention that before, to commit our entire organization to solving the 17 goals and challenges that the world is facing. And since then, our company has been aligning our products, our programs, our partnerships, and our people up against the goals. And that will remain until the deadline's reached in 2030, or when we achieve true sustainable development. But it's been really amazing to skill up our workforce, because that was a 2-year exercise in itself, just educating the entire SAP workforce on what are the UN Sustainable Development Goals and how are they relevant to you and your daily work.
Yeah, that's a lot. That really, that would be where to start.
Yes.
So digging a little bit deeper into the SAP ecosystem, you mentioned on our call last week that there was recently a platform launch called Chasing Zero. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes, no, I'm so happy you brought this up, because this is really, my baby right now, and what we're going to market with around our commitment to purpose and sustainability. And Chasing Zero is not only our corporate sustainability narrative, it's, as you mentioned, a platform, both for executive thought leadership that provides unique points of view and insights into sustainability related transformation, but also across a number of different activations, from products to programs to events to everything that we do that engages with our greater ecosystem. The whole notion of Chasing Zero is really inspired by companies being able to effectively lead the way to a world of zero emissions, zero waste, and zero inequality, which leans up very well up against the pillars that I mentioned in the beginning of our call: economy, society, and environment. And those have always been three really important pillars to SAP. So it's just different language, that we're going to market with to make it a compelling story as well, and to get everyone excited about the mission ahead of us. And that's really what it's all about. It's about unifying our industry efforts around climate action, circular economy, and social responsibility to make this happen.
No, I mean, it's so inspiring. It's fantastic. So let's switch gears a little and talk about the women at SAP and the industry as a whole. We all know that women have been especially hit hard with the pandemic, and you have been in a position at SAP working within sort of the equality. I would love to know a little bit about what SAP has been doing to support women, and really what's resonated with you throughout the whole area of the pandemic.
Oh, I love that you bring up this question too. I think one of my favorite efforts, that we launched during the pandemic, and which is running still very actively, is a partnership with an organization called Hey Mama. And Hey Mama is just an incredible, organization dedicated to empowering women and enabling women who happen to be moms as well, with all the right tools for them to be able to manage, work-life balance, to getting proper funding for whatever they're building, if they're entrepreneurs. And we've been very invested into the entrepreneurial section of the organization. So the community of entrepreneurs that, that live within the Hey Mama organization. And right now we're running a mentorship program for female mothers who are also entrepreneurs. And I'm actually a mentor in one of the groups. And we have a person in our group who's not a mom, but she's a plant mom. So she has a lot of plants, and she has this incredible organization that matches gardening with mental health, because gardening is such a big component to, reducing stress and improving mental health. And so I just think that's really cool that she signed up for the program, even though she's not a mom to a child, she's a mom to plants. And and she's doing such an important job in the industry. And basically what we're doing is we're equipping, all these women who are part of the program, and also a lot of non-binary people as well. So I shouldn't say all women. It's a very diverse group, and of people who are just there to make a difference. And most of them happen to be parents as well, and which, just gives you an extra obstacle, especially during COVID. That's the biggest number of people that we've seen leave the workforce have been because of, their inability to manage both work and households. So we want to make sure that doesn't happen. And the Hey Mama partnership has been, really instrumental in making sure that we're equipping them with grants and with technology and with networks to really build out their businesses from the entrepreneurial side.
Awesome. And I think sort of the element of flexibility, like that's what's needed. I mean, the world has changed so significantly that, I know that when we were talking last week, when I heard that you had moved from New York to Hawaii, I was like, why didn't I do that? That was dumb of me. I should have so done that. But, I mean, good for you. And to be able to actually navigate and to sort of now this world that we're in, that everything is sort of virtual, but yet still starting to come back to in person. I just love your story about that move and that transition, and, taking that risk and doing what you did to move your family out there. I think it's just so inspiring.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I must admit that SAP is really leading by example when it comes to flexibility. And we actually just launched a huge public, announcement a couple of months ago called Pledge to Flex.
Right.
And it's essentially a pledge to create the most flexible workplace in the world, right? And still performing or outperforming, in our industry. And I think that's really amazing, and it's awesome to be part of, because I have that flexibility, and I want to make sure that we're influencing other companies as well to provide that flexibility to especially people who have other commitments as caregivers outside of work.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Do you have any advice for female and male leaders around sort of pragmatic ways that we can help support women in sort of getting back into the working environment, or sort of how we can move things forward from where we are right now?
Oh, I love that question too, Rachel. So I think, first of all, I love that you've been addressing both men and women in this panel, even though, it's a women's event. I think it's so important that we're addressing our male peers as well, because, I think that they struggle with a lot of the same things that we do, especially around the flexible workplace, et cetera. But I think it's important to point out, that this is not a gender issue. It's a socioeconomic issue that will implicate long-term consequences for both men and women. So I think whether we are men or women, we're in a position to have influence, and we need to use that influence to advocate for diverse talent in our organizations. And the data proves it again and again and again, that our organizations will be more successful when they have diversity across the board, from the top to the bottom line of the organization. We need to have an equal split of gender. We need to have representation of minorities and marginalized communities. And, I think it's our responsibility as leaders who have that information, have that knowledge, to change that and to ensure that the people that we hire and take on help reflect these diverse organizations that we know will also be more successful for it.
Yeah, and definitely the stats prove that out. There's no doubt about that. So let's finish by talking about the things that get you the most excited in terms of the future of your role, and sort of developing content and partnerships for SAP that drive both sort of business awareness, but also your sustainability agenda.
Yeah, this is such a great one too. With the notion of sustainability becoming profitable and profitability finally becoming sustainable is an extremely exciting intersection to be part of, and it'll change the way that we do business for the better and forever, right?
Yeah. It used to be just like an add-on. That's how I always used to remember it, whereas now it's becoming an essential part of the marketing, which I love. I just think it's awesome.
Exactly. It's no longer a separate strategy. It's, it's embedded into your core business strategy, which is, it's just been quite the journey, right, to get here. It's always been something that was managed on the side and wasn't really holistically played out. But that's what we're seeing now. And that's really exciting. And I think that's what get me out of bed in the morning and makes me wake up, at 4 a.m. to be on those early calls with our European colleagues and East Coast colleagues. But it's, that's really what excites me about the work. And then from a female perspective, I think this is a huge opportunity for women to make a mark, because if anyone understands, the holistic world and how everything is interconnected, that's something that we are just intuitively really good at understanding. It comes with a lot of empathy too, which is considered, a softer trait and a female trait, even though we see a lot of our male colleagues, also possessing that trait. It's a great trait to have. And it's so awesome to see how it's finally being valued as well in the industry.
That's awesome. And you mentioned about mentorship earlier as well. I mean, how are you actively involved? Is there programs, it sounds like, within SAP that you work to support one another? How does that look? How does that work?
Yeah, so we have, a ton of different mentorship opportunities, both within SAP and outside of SAP. So there's the Hey Mama mentorship program that anyone can actually apply for. It's on Hey Mama's website. If you look up SAP grants, you can get access to that one. And then we have our SAP.io department, which is, our startup arm, where we work actively with the startup ecosystem, and there's a lot of mentorship opportunities there too. And then, SAP people are just, I always say that SAP stands for super awesome people. So if you see a person who works for SAP, just reach out to them, because they tend to be very open and very excited to connect with people outside of the organization, right? So I think if you're looking for a mentor, that works in enterprise software, SAP is a great place to look for one, and I'll be happy to make the introductions as well where needed.
That's awesome. That's wonderful. So I know we're kind of running out of time right now, but I just wanted to, we've got a question here, which I think we may have, it's kind of going back to more sort of the cultural shift internally at SAP since COVID. Have you experienced sort of a change in dynamic of how people interact and work with each other?
Oh yes, huge transformation, not just because of COVID. We also had a gigantic reorganization take place. We are, former CEO for 10 years left the company, I think literally 3 months before COVID broke out. So, so we went through just humongous organizational changes side by side with COVID, raging around the globe, and SAP really changed for the better in many ways, especially around the flexible workplace. We took a really, really deep look at our spend as well, because before COVID, people had been jumping on planes, going to conferences, and just go, not necessarily living sustainably in a business context, when it comes to travel. And so I think that there are so many things that we took a closer look at where, it's just for the better. And the organization will be better fit for it in the future. And then there's the whole, empathy of just being in a global organization, seeing people, in India a couple of months ago when COVID was raging there, how the entire company just came together and started, sending everything that they could, towards India, whether it be resources or donations or, whatever it may be, right? People were just very supportive of each other, and it feels like a global tribe when you're able to come together and support across the board like that. And I think it's brought us closer together. And people who have worked remotely for 10 or 20 years, they're all of a sudden much more connected to the company culturally as well, because now we've all done it together.
No, it's fascinating that everyone kind of in the same boat, experiencing the same. There's a lot of but I mean, I think as well, just I speak to more people now than I think I've ever done in my life. So it's incredible.
Yes.
Amazing. Well, listen, is there anything, last question here, in terms of what you're working on, in terms of eyeballs, people going to have a look at and finding out more about the content you're creating, where should we be directing everyone to read up on all of the great work that you're doing?
So you can always follow our social media channels for purpose and sustainability. They're called SAP for Good, so the number 4. And you can find us on Instagram, on Facebook, and on Twitter. And then, of course, the SAP primary brand channels you can find across every single social medium except from TikTok, which I think is in the works right now. So you might be able to find us there soon too. And then just from a resource perspective, to learn more, go to sap.com/sustainability or sap.com/purpose. It'll take you to the same destination, and there you can read everything about Chasing Zero and our agendas across zero emissions, zero waste, and zero inequality. And you also have the opportunity to connect with us through that page and submit your own Chasing Zero story, and we might pick it up and highlight it as well from there.
Amazing. Sandra, you are a force of nature. That is incredible. And what an amazing story from your entire journey from Copenhagen to Germany to Japan to New York to Honolulu. So that is really, really incredible. I think we are almost out of time. I think Ryan is just, oh, hang on. Sorry, something's coming up on my screen. Oh, yep, there he is. Sorry. No, this has been so wonderful. I really appreciate it, Sandra. This was really fascinating and incredible work coming out of SAP.
Yeah, I absolutely loved having this conversation with you, Rachel. What you're doing and just your personal story is so inspiring. And I couldn't be more thrilled than to have had this conversation with you today, and hopefully many more to come.
Absolutely, definitely. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And good work with like your Wi-Fi outage and overcoming every obstacle.
Thank you.
Wi-Fi can't stop you. If the internet
Nothing
can't stop you,
her.
Well, Rachel and Sandra, thank you so much for being here and chatting with us. We are actually coming to a close here for our Women in Marketing event. So thank you for bringing us all the way to the end here. And I'll go ahead and close this out now.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Bye, Sandra.
And to our listeners, thank you so much for being here. Really, we know things are crazy. Everyone's working from home. You might have family, friends staying with you. You might have dogs and cats and other animals, and everything else that's distracting you. But thank you for making it all the way to the end of our sessions with us today. There was a lot covered. Want to encourage everyone to reach out, whether they put their information in our chat window or you want to connect with them over on LinkedIn. Either way, make sure you stay in touch, and we're going to keep delivering you nonstop content. And eventually we're going to be bringing back our live events as well. But if there's ever anything that you would like to hear, if there's anything you would ever like to discuss, you can reach out to me. I'll put my contact information in the chat window over here. We can have a conversation about ways that we can continue to expand on the topics. We can elaborate more on specific sessions, or we can keep talking about women in marketing or anything else that you have in mind. We really want to hear it. Again, this is a community that drives our content. And so we would love to hear what your thoughts are. And as a reminder, next week on Tuesday, the 13th of July, we have a consumer engagement summit taking place at 12 o'clock Eastern. We're going to have leaders from Marriott International, American Express, Walgreens, Mondelez, and a lot more. Again, thank you all for being here.